the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening or good morning, whichever the case may be, and welcome to a Friday night, Saturday morning edition of Coast to Coast AM, live talk radio right here all night long. I'm Art Bell, and it is going to be a legendary Friday night, Saturday morning. I've got a surprise guest for you. His name is Shawn Morton. Shawn David Morton, to be specific. And we will get to Mr. Morton in just a moment and a fascinating story. Right now, let me begin the program by telling you about a switch that is occurring. We're doing an affiliate switch in Salt Lake City, Utah. And this Friday night, Saturday morning, which will be heard, I guess, Monday or Sunday night, Monday morning. When it is heard Sunday night, Monday morning, it will not be heard on KTKK in Salt Lake, our present affiliate, but KCNR, our new affiliate in Salt Lake City. And so we make that switch both with the regular program and, of course, Dreamland as well. As a matter of fact, they've already been carrying Dreamland on KCNR. They will simply pick up the rest of the show, and they will carry us from midnight to 5 a.m., 7 days a week. That's KCNR, a powerhouse, I might add, a serious powerhouse, 5 kilowatts, non-directional, in Salt Lake City. So thank you very much. All the years that we have been with KTKK, we certainly appreciate it. And it's been wonderful being affiliated with you, and we're looking forward to our affiliation with KCNR AM in Salt Lake City. And that should, by the way, make the show available to a lot of people in Salt Lake that heretofore have not been able to get it. As the network just continues to expand in nearly every direction you can imagine. Okay. Who is Shawn Morton? Shawn Morton is kind of an interesting individual. He's worked, has an extensive background in television and film, worked with Gene Roddenberry in the early 1980s. Now, I wonder how you get from living in a monastery, which he did, a Tibetan monastery, to television with Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, then Star Trek, The Next Generation. As a matter of fact, Mr. Roddenberry even purchased a TV series from him called The Guardians. He's written music videos for a number of very popular artists. Was the first person to interview Billy Meyer in Switzerland nearly 5 years ago, and has purchased the rights to the Meyer case film. Has been hired as a consultant for the upcoming Fox TV program Encounters. The show will be a summer replacement for Briscoe County Jr., and they hope to be the lead-in to X-Files this coming fall. Was associate producer on a television production called UFO Contactees. Has a deep psychic background. Is the author of The Millennium Factor, which not only predicts world history for the next 30 years, but gives exact details of the whereabouts of the Antichrist and how he will come to power. A second book written, called The Gulf Breeze Prophecies, was co-written with a guest we had the other night, U.S. Intelligence Officer Vance Davis. And it goes on, unsolved mysteries, and so forth and so on, television appearances, Montel Williams, and so forth and so on. So, in rounding out our week of predictions, prophecy, doom, and disaster, we're going to have Shawn Morton on, and he's got a lot of contemporary news for you as well. Some news on Korea. He's got some knowledge about Korea, of all things. So, why don't we find out just who this Shawn Morton is? And he's tied up with Vance Davis since they co-authored a book. So, hello, Shawn.
Hello, Art. Gosh, what an honor it is to be on your program. I just want to let you know that I've been listening to you for a long time, and you're doing a fabulous job in getting the word out to people. And it's so many people have called me and said, you know, look, you ought to call Art. You guys would get along great. And you probably hear this all the time, but I don't think I can say it enough that you're doing a fabulous job and a real service to everyone that listens to you and everyone that tunes in your station.
Very, very kind of you, Shawn. Boy, I'll tell you, you've got some background, my friend. Really quite a background.
Let me, I just have to say for the record, I was not the first person to interview Billy Meyer. We were the first people to interview him in nearly 5 years when we interviewed him back in 1990.
And you did it for film, correct?
We did it for a TV series called UFO Contactees, which is still in the works, and all of the I was an associate producer and a co-director on the series, where we traveled all around the world and put together nearly 600 hours of video footage for the series, and then basically now we have a magazine called the UFO Library Magazine, which I think is probably the hottest and slickest of the new publications, and I'm a monthly writer and contributor for that magazine, and you can order all the videos of all of the interviews that we did from out of the back of that magazine.
What can you tell me? Let me try something here. I'm hearing a little bit of something or another, so let me try something here. Okay. Yeah, that may be better. Anyway, Shawn, what can you tell me about the Billy Meyer case?
Goodness me. Well, it's we just got finished writing a film about the case called Message from the Pleiades. We have a development deal right now with a fairly substantial film company. As far as the Meyer case goes, in my consideration, there were only two really good UFO cases, or should I say two of the best of the UFO cases, and that was the Travis Walton case and the Billy Meyer case. The Meyer case has been ongoing since Meyer was about 5 years old. He's had contacts with a number of different alien races. He has over 1,500 35-millimeter photographs, or did at one time. There are metal samples in the case. There are over 100 and so eyewitnesses in the case. There is, of course, the some 1,500 35-millimeter photographs. There's video. There's film. It's basically, from an evidence standpoint, the best UFO case ever.
All right. Not everybody knows what the Billy Meyer case is. Give us a thumbnail sketch.
Okay. Billy Meyer is a Swiss farmer who began having contacts with extraterrestrials when he was about 5 or 6 years old, with a race of beings originally called the Timur, and then at about the age of 35, he had contacts with a race of beings who called themselves the Pleiadians, specifically with a woman who called herself Semyaze. The case began to be investigated by Colonel Wendell Stevens, Jim Delatoso, Lee Elders in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and Mr. Meyer has compiled a large composite of material, specifically 3 books that are all transcriptions of his conversations with these extraterrestrial beings who claim to be here to help us, or at least observe. They've given Meyer knowledge about planets in the solar system, the nature of the government, what's going on this planet, and where they see the future of mankind going. They're supposed to be a benevolent race that basically has either our best interest in mind, primarily because they feel that they apparently planted this race on this planet, and so they're like our grandparents, sort of looking after us.
Right.
So it's considered by most. It's a very controversial case. But
why is it considered to have a high reliability factor? In other words, you said there were 150 witnesses. To what?
To the various sightings that Meyer has had, to Meyer physically disappearing on various occasions.
Really?
Well, Wendell Stevens saw him just vanish. Crowds of people have seen him just disappear. And because so many people have actually physically seen the ships, there was one period when the ships actually put on a display for one of Meyer's group, where there were about 12 people on the hill or so, and there were 3 or 4 ships maneuvering up and down a valley. There was film and video footage of one of the craft, one of the UFOs, actually involved in, I wouldn't call it a dogfight, but there was a Swiss jet fighter that was swooping the craft, and the craft was moving out of the way and disappearing and reappearing on the other side again. And it's just considered the best UFO case in the world, and the reason I was interested in making a film about it was just because of the fact that this is sort of the grown-up version of E.T. I think it's becoming very, very widely accepted now that there is something to UFOs, that there are races in the universe.
Interesting, though. You mentioned that, and then you mentioned Travis Walton, and you did not mention Corona.
I'd go along with Corona and Roswell. I'm talking about physical contact cases.
I see. All right.
As far as from an evidence point of view, you're right. Roswell, Corona, but that's still going to remain a mystery because nobody was inside the ship. Nobody was actually there when it happened. There are physical bodies. There were reports by deathbed statements by General Ramey, who admitted that they were there, that the bodies were there, that they saw the craft. So that's a good case as far as something physically crashing and physical evidence, and here's the body. The Travis Walton case was an abduction that happened in front of a number of witnesses. Travis had an experience inside the ship and obviously lived to tell about it. And the Billy Meyer case is kind of the next step because now it's, okay, here we are. It's not so much a revelation as it is a confirmation. And here's what the universe is all about. And here's where we're going. And here's some notes for you to take back to your people to show here's the true history of planet Earth. Here's where we see you're going. Here's what's going on in your planet and your solar system and your universe right now.
All right,
well,
look.
A grown-up version of E.T.
Yeah, look, you've been intimately involved, I guess, in this case and in some of the other major cases, and you sound like a rational person to me. How convinced are you that this is all the real thing?
I'd say 90% of it. It's actually UFO hoaxes are very rare. I'd say 90% of what's going on. The real problem is that all UFO cases are ultimately like Zen koans. They're ultimately like they ultimately don't make sense. So many people find that when you're in a UFO case, you're investigating something, you eventually come to a wall. You eventually come to the end of the maze.
Exactly.
Where you don't know what's on the other side of the wall.
Exactly.
And so many people, because of the way the mind works, instead of simply being calm and quiet about it and simply saying, well, this is what I know, this is what I know, and this is what I don't know, and then being quiet and allowing what you don't know to come to you, a lot of people will sort of run screaming out to the weeds saying that, these are the conclusions which I draw, and not realize that a lot of this stuff ultimately doesn't make any sense.
Well, I have to say, though, the UFO community is slow, it seems, to declare something in its own realm to be a fraud. In other words, it almost hangs on to these things in almost a hope.
Well, we're working on a great fraud case right now for encounters. There was a videotape that was circulating for a period of time. It was a 1-hour videotape that was a home movie of what appeared to be an actual alien abduction. And this thing was good. I mean, it was good. You had 3 brothers who were out in the woods who saw a ship, little aliens walking around the outside of the ship. Guys run back into the house. They get guns. They shoot one of these aliens off the roof.
Really?
The alien falls down off the roof.
Oh,
they bring
my.
the alien body in the house. The women are screaming. The men go out to get the truck to rescue everybody. The men disappear. The alien disappears. I mean, it was great. And
I've never even heard about this.
All right, I'll send you a copy of it.
I would love it.
It's great. It was the final shot of it, which was so amazing, was that finally the mother screams at the boy who's taking the video, say, "You put that thing down or I'll wrap it around your neck." So he takes it in the corner, puts the thing in the corner, takes off the belt or this power belt or whatever, goes in the kitchen. And then you hear them talking or playing cards in the kitchen, and then this door at the end of a hallway opens up, and you see this brilliant light that comes from the door. And you see 3 alien beings, one by one, come out, turn the corner, and the 3rd alien being stops, leans back on his foot, tilts his head, looks right at the camera, and the camera goes fades out. And that's the end of the video. And it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
How have you been able to uncover this to be a fraud?
We did a lot of checking. I ran checks with the Screen Actors Guild to see if I could find actors or actresses because, I figured that these people are acting in this video, that they're good.
Too good, yeah.
I finally managed to track down, it was produced under a bogus production company, and there were all kinds of stories about this video. There was a story that in the one case that no one had seen the family, that they just completely disappeared, that the video was smuggled out of a Marin County police file, that there was a production company involved in it, but they only pretended that the video was fake so that they could copyright it.
Oh, my.
I mean, this whole thing went all the way through it. And it's
all right, well, you have got to get me a copy.
I'll send you a copy of it, because we went through this whole thing to try to find it out. And finally, I found Dean Alioto, who produced the film, I think, for about $10,000 as a USC student project. And Dean and I have actually become pretty good friends off this whole thing. But you'll see pieces of it on Encounters, because we're going to do that and say, well, this is kind of a UFO alien hoax. and then we're going to do another piece, hopefully, that's going to be an actual alien hunt. Now, here's a woman we feel is actually abducted and has the marks and has probes in her head and the whole thing, and we're sort of going to stake her out like a sacrificial lamb and put cameras all around her and see if we can actually get something actually happening.
I see. All right. Well, that's the negative side of it, and I'm glad you're doing that kind of work. But nevertheless, with all these things you've investigated, you still conclude with 90% reliability there is something going on.
Oh, there's something out there. Definitely something out there.
Yeah.
And one of my probably biggest claims to fame was the investigations that I've done into Area 51 and finding that hilltop. And I found this in May of 1991. I climbed up this hill near the base that you can actually look down on the facility. And I videotaped the facility and, snuck up there several times and actually got objects coming and going and things landing and what have you. And, of course, now that hilltop has become a big deal. I mean, it was, the military's just confiscated 4,000 acres. They're planning on closing down Groom Road. This was just because myself and my goofy friends were, climbing up the top of this hill and watching things going on. And
how many times did you meet up with Wackenhut?
Well, virtually every time we went out there. The only, I used to lead tours out to the area where I've probably led maybe 50 tours or so of people just in Los Angeles that wanted to go see something. And we probably saw something on maybe 40 or so of those tours.
Did you come back with any good video?
Lots.
Lots of good video?
Lots and lots. I got, as a matter of fact, the one really good video that I got, which was a close-up of one of the ships maneuvering down the valley, was the only time that I was actually ever threatened by the Wackenhut guys, because I drove whatever this thing was, it landed on the public side of the valley, and I drove my car after this thing, only to have 4 trucks pull across the road, and guys with guns, they turned all the lights on and told me to go back to the road. And I got out of my car and started walking towards them, and suddenly I had all these red lights dancing on my chest. And, and these guys were screaming at me to get back in my car. And I realized suddenly I felt like I was in a bad Kafka movie here. And these guys are pointing their guns at me, and I just said, look, no problems. I'm getting back in my car, no problems at all. And I got my car, turned around, and went back to the road.
Do you think if you had not cooperated and had pressed forward, they would have shot you?
I don't know. It would have been a call because I was on public land. I mean, I wasn't on their land. I was in the middle of the valley on that's the only reason why I got belligerent and got out of my car and started walking towards them in the first place. It's possible. That's the only real run-in I've had with the guys. Other than, actually, they're not allowed to talk to you. You can run after the Wackenhut guys and they'll run away because they can't do anything to you without the sheriff. And, of course, now 51 is, I wasn't sure if this was the topic for tonight.
I'm not sure it is either. We're going to cover all kinds of things, but right now we are on this. It's interesting.
I can tell you what I found out about what's going on there.
Good. Tell us.
As far as my investigations go, and you'll see an article on this in UFO Library Magazine this next month. As far as my investigations go, during the 1950s, 51 has sort of changed hands a lot of different times. My father was an experimental test pilot, and he tested prototypes for the SR-71 Blackbird and the U-2 spy plane and what have you, way back in the 50s.
Right.
About 85, 86, it was kind of strange because it seems as though the territory actually passed into private hands for a period of time. It was not under the control of the legitimate military. It was not under the control of the Department of Energy or the Atomic Energy Commission. About 85 was when they applied to expand the borders by 89,000 acres. The federal government and the Bureau of Land Management dragged their feet for a couple of years until the military or whoever was running 51 at that time just got sick of it and basically just confiscated the land, declaring executive orders telling congressmen that they answered to a higher authority than the United States government, and they needed the land, and that was that. Then this took about 2 years. So it was 85, 86, 87. 87 was when it appeared as though the saucer technology began to move in. And it wasn't just the saucer technology, but also whatever objects coming in from space. Very, very large objects. And the objects that I've seen in the tours and the surveillance that I've done out there have been primarily discs. We've seen the stealth bomber test a couple of times, and we saw one thing that was huge. This thing looked like a giant door wedge. It was blunt on the nose. It was black on the bottom. It was white on the top. It was scooped at the back, kind of like a Corvette, but it looked like two door wedges, one on top of the other. And it was massive. We videotaped it, but all we could see was the light on the nose and a light on the top and the bottom on the camera. So you just see this massive object moving across the sky. But this thing had to be, I mean, guesstimations, depending on how far away we were from it, was, I mean, it had to be something like 900 feet long. It was
all right,
huge.
Shawn, hold that thought. It's a good cliffhanger point. We'll come back to you in a moment.
Okay.
All right. Shawn Morton is our guest at the moment. We're talking about an area right adjacent to the point from which I broadcast, here in the high desert. In other words, Area 51, just more or less over the hill, as it were. All right. We'll pause for local station business here at the bottom of the hour, and we'll come back with Shawn Morton and more about Area 51, and then predictions and what we can look forward to for the next 30 years in this country. We'll be back.
From the Kingdom of Nye, you're hearing Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the CBC Radio Network.
Actually, the closest broadcast point to Area 51 in the nation that I know of. It's good to be with you. My guest is Shawn Morton, and he's somebody who, along with a lot of other things, knows something about Area 51. So back we go to Shawn. Shawn, good evening again.
Good evening, Art.
We are, right adjacent to Area 51 here.
Yes, I know. You're very, very, very close to the base.
Yes, and I'm telling you, Shawn, there are weird things in the sky.
You ever get any heat from those guys for things you talk about on your show?
No. And if I were them, I wouldn't put heat on me, because then I'd just squawk all the more. So, no, I don't expect it. But you never know. I mean, we could go silent here any time, and I could be getting hauled away by men in black or something. Anyway, you were describing I'll tell you, Shawn, I saw a craft. I saw a really serious craft right out here. It was a triangle shape. I'm sure you've heard me talk about it.
Uh-huh.
Have you seen anything like that at the base up there?
No. I've just seen all we've seen is the discs, or the brilliant balls of light. I do have a piece of videotape that was taken from on top of the Tropicana Hotel in April of 1991 of a number of brilliant triangles that may be what you're describing, but there was a whole, it looked like a squadron of about 5 of them doing maneuvers over downtown Las Vegas.
Mm.
This is the end of side 1. Please leave the cassette exactly where it is, flip it over, and begin again.
51, or is that segment of your life over?
Well, it's not that it's over. There's just not. I'll explain to you what I think is going on there, and I'll just let you know some of the stuff that I'm working on that I just think is interesting. It is my belief that that most of the saucer technology and a lot of the really weird stuff has been actually moved out of 51 and was moved out probably around the beginning of this year. Just to let you know what I know, I have some very, very high sources in the government. My dad used to be vice president of TRW, and he was a public relations director for NASA, and I've got 2 godfathers who walked on the moon, and my uncle Donnie was an admiral in the Office of Naval Intelligence. So I've got a lot of sources, guys who are ex-CIA and guys who are ex-ONI. Who basically, if I submit my questions to them in a certain way, they can find things out and give me yes or no's and let me know what's happening. And this is, to the best of my knowledge, what's going on over there right now. The facility itself, as I said, Dreamland, or the box, or Area 51, or the projects, as it was also called, was under independent control for a period of time. Whoever was running it seemed to have executive authority. They could pretty much do anything they want, spend any kind of money that they wanted to. And, of course, many people have known about where the hangars for the saucers actually were. It was not at Groom Lake, but there was a road that went down from it about 15 miles or so over to an area called Papoose Lake.
Mm-hmm.
I also had a huge advantage, Art, as an investigator in the first part of this whole thing. Because of the fact that I had a number of people, or there were quite a few people actually running around saying that they worked at Groom Lake, that they had access to information, that they'd actually been to the facility, and I had access of being literally probably the only human being on Earth who hadn't worked there who had actually physically seen the place, because I found this mountain that looked right down on the base. So for about 6 months or so, before I started letting people know where this mountain was, and before it became a massive Nevada tourist attraction, I had the advantage of being able to talk to people and say, well, you tell me what the base looks like, and you draw me a schematic, and you tell me what's here and what's there, and I'll believe you. So here's what I think was going on. What happened was is that when whoever these guys are, who seem to be above the military, who seem to have, or literally above our government, or most of the governments of the world that have access to whatever this type of technology was, there were requests, formal requests, that came from the base to the Department of Energy or the Atomic Energy Commission that run the test site, and to the legitimate military at Nellis. I mean, not even the commander at Nellis could actually go to the facility during this period of time. And the requests were for them to turn off their radar on Wednesday nights between about dusk, about 6 p.m., and about 1 a.m. Well, of course, the military and the Department of Energy said, no way, we're not going to do it. And because of this lack of cooperation with whoever was working there, suddenly the saucers then began to test on the public side of the valley, literally below cloud cover, usually, because the best nights to go out there were Wednesday night from about 6 p.m. until about 1 a.m., and these things would literally test 50 to 100 feet off the ground. I mean, they were flying right over our heads, and we were videotaping them, and the first time I'd ever seen a UFO in my life was when I was out there in February of '91, and one of these things swooped my car, and I chased after it with a friend of mine, and we got our faces nice and sunburned, and were very, very ill for about 3 days after that with very, very high fevers. And that's, and then I was sold. I was just hooked. I wanted to get out there as much as I could and take as much video as I could and tell all my friends about it.
How good is your videotape?
It's right up close. We've got I've got video of the base. I'll send you some of the stuff if you want, Art.
I would love it. What about video of craft? What have you got?
I've got a video that was taken with a 12 times lens from about in the middle of the valley that was probably hovering 75 to 100 feet off the ground from about maybe 4 miles away.
All right.
Which is not a lot when you're out in the desert.
Right. What can you see? I can't see the video. You've seen it. You took it.
It's a glowing disc. The disc itself, you can see it's a whitish blue color. You can see an energy field actually going around the outside of it. It seems to be actually creating some kind of bubble actually around the ship. And when you get very, very close on it, there seem to be it looks kind of like the bat plane. You see kind of these weird edges on it, and it's hovering, and then it moves up into the corner of the video and does a little zip and then comes down. And as I said, it was my belief that this thing actually malfunctioned, or it actually physically landed, or something happened to it where it landed in the desert. And then I chased after this thing with my car, and of course there were security guys around it virtually right away.
Do you think this is alien technology that we have acquired from them through some sort of deal, which is one story, or do you think this is our own technology? Well,
it's certainly possible. I hate to comment on it because I don't know. I can tell you that the sources that I've had from guys that were guards, from guys that had actually been people at the facility, have said that they have seen alien beings at the facility. It is kind of, well, it's kind of weird because, I mean, I won't mention him by name, but one very famous scientist who came out of the facility, it's sort of unusual to see how his story has kind of changed from the beginning, because my documentary team interviewed him in February of '90, where Joe Randazzo and Richard Kashansky interviewed him.
Go ahead and name him.
Well, no, because I don't like talking negatively about people on the radio. It's just not my thing. But he did claim originally in his story that he had actually physically seen alien beings at the base, and then as he became more famous, he then claimed that he never saw aliens, that he didn't see anything like it, and yet there was a story that he was working on a saucer, and that.
All right, I don't remember any claims. I think that I know who you're talking about, and I think I've interviewed this individual a number of times.
Yes.
And I don't recall any claims, Shawn, that he ever saw any alien being at all.
Well, like I said, it's the original part of the story was that he actually on one occasion had actually seen something, and there were hypnosis transcripts, which I can't get too far into this because it's not a like I said, it's not it's not really negative. It's just, I believe his story. I think he's legitimate. I think that he's changed his story slightly from that there was alien technology and that he saw an alien on the base simply because, he got a lot more famous, and I think he was going for the credibility, and, he's doing a big movie now, and it just seemed to me as if, maybe that's why the story got altered for some reason. I think that there's alien technology there. I think that some very credible witnesses have actually physically seen alien beings at the facility.
Can you go any farther with it? In other words, what kind of deal have we made with these aliens?
Well, look, I can give you what I know as far as the people that I've interviewed.
All right.
There seems to be kind of a timeline that's involved, and the timeline involved would be starting the beginning of the modern UFO era, which a lot of people think starts with Roswell and Corona, and it doesn't really, and this is kind of a fun story if people want to check it. But it actually starts with the Battle of Los Angeles on February 26th, Wednesday night of 1942, when a UFO actually parked itself over Culver City for a period of 6 hours. The United States military bounced 14,000 rounds of ammunition off this thing's energy field, and a photograph appeared of it on the front page of the LA Times and the New York Times on February 27th, Thursday, front page of the newspapers. And anybody that wants to go back and check the archives can certainly check it. I pitched a story to Unsolved Mysteries, or this particular story to Unsolved Mysteries, which unfortunately they didn't take. One of the witnesses in the case was actually DeForest Kelley, the fellow who played Bones on Star Trek.
Right.
And the complaints from the people were that the ordnance that had actually bounced off the saucer created these huge holes in the top of their houses, and 14 people were killed in car accidents because there was a blackout of Los Angeles at the time, and the military would never admit what the object was, would never say that we were directly being attacked by the Japanese. So from then until the crashes in Roswell and Corona, and it is my belief that those crashes occurred, that there were two ships that were traveling in tandem that ran into a microwave grid that was being thrown up by the RX-27 microwave towers in Socorro, New Mexico. The microwave grid did something to damage the antimatter engines of the craft. One of them exploded, leaving all of the debris in Mac Brazel's field. The other one got a big hole in it from the other craft exploding, and then crashed in Corona. That we were able to actually pick up an alien being. That a number of them actually did survive. That the story then goes that from this, we made some kind of deal, that there was a trade, an exchange of ambassadors, so to speak. These creatures seemed to be at the end of a genetic breeding curve. They needed genetic material. They wanted access to this planet to come and go as they pleased, since we now had certain technology to actually shoot them down. And we pretty much fell for it hook, line, and sinker. And this whole thing began about 1955, and actually about 53. And then there's the whole story about Eisenhower, that Eisenhower was swept away from to Edwards Air Force Base during a golf game, that there was a meeting with Eisenhower with a number of these alien beings and the ships themselves, that apparently the scientists were just comatose. They couldn't imagine the fact that we felt that we had the highest technology anywhere in the universe, and now here these beings were flying their ships around, totally shocking our religious people and our scientific people. That there was an official exchange of ambassadors, literally that scene that you saw at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind,
yes,
supposedly actually took place at Area 51 back in 1955. That big bowl-shaped valley where the Groom Lake facility was, that a ship physically came down, and that the agreement was that they could pretty much, so long as they provided us with lists of people that were to be abducted, and that the people that were abducted were not harmed, that their memories were wiped, and that they were put back pretty much at the exact same place where they found them, everything would be fine.
God, what a story. Do you believe all that?
I'm about 90% sure that that's what's going on, and that's what's happened. That there seems to be some kind of I've worked with a lot of abductees, and they're picked up. They're not harmed physically. One of the reasons why we have so much hypnotic material coming out, but Hawkins' book and John Mack's book,
right,
has not been really because the aliens have been meaning to harm these people. It's because they haven't wanted them to remember the experience. So they've put up a hypnotic shield, and then it's sort of like my pushing you out of an airplane, and you having the horrified experience of being pushed out of an airplane and then hypnotizing you as if it never happened. The physical body has a cellular or sense memory of certain completely horrific events, and human beings react in a very funny way, and they get bothered by things, they see certain things, they begin to trigger memories, and they eventually begin to go psychotic because you've got this horrifically terrifying experience that's now being covered by a hypnotic mask.
Trying to fight its way to consciousness.
Consciousness.
Yes.
And now you're seeing, in all of the material that's coming out now on abductions, I mean, it's just become a mass phenomena. The people, I guess what you can say, the scoffers or the non-believers will say, well, this whole abduction phenomenon is just the same, it's just leprechauns and fairies and goblins and ghouls. And, it used to be these things, and now it's just little green men. Well, my attitude is, well, if it used to be these things hundreds of years ago, then, and we're simply renaming the phenomenon, doesn't this show you that the phenomenon has been going on not just for 40 years, but possibly for hundreds of years?
All right. You mentioned a kind of a genetic memory, and I'm beginning to feel that myself, Shawn, that there's some sort of collective memory that human beings have. And lately, Shawn, we have been getting prediction after prediction after prediction of disaster and trouble on the way, and a lot of people have the quiet sense, and I'm one of them, that something big is coming. Don't know what, just have a feeling that we're on the edge. And do you have that sense?
Well, absolutely, and it's one of the reasons why back in 1992 I wrote my book, The Millennium Factor, because we're coming to the end of so many cycles, and there's so many things that are pointing to the next 30 years as being possibly the most heroic and yet the most tragic period in the history of mankind.
Sounds interesting. Let's hear a little bit of it. In other words, what's coming?
Okay, let me do this. Let me just finish off with the information that I've got on 51, because I figured you guys would be real interested in this.
Well, you're right.
Okay, just to polish this off, and I'm going to be talking about this at the UFO Expo West tomorrow. What I felt is that because of the massive publicity, because of people like me going out there and physically seeing what was going on, because they were taking a lot of heat for what was going on out there, I got information that the saucers were to be moved in late 1993. The saucers were to be moved. Area 51 was going back into the hands of the legitimate military, that they had in fact received a multi-billion-dollar infusion of funds. We were up there on the hill watching them extend the runways from, I think, about 3.5 miles to almost 5 miles, laying literally cable down into the runway so that it's wider, it's longer, and it's much stronger. There have been a number of new buildings that have gone up, and they've increased troop strength there probably by 50% or so. There's about 2,500 new guys there.
What do you think they're getting ready to do?
I think a lot of it has to do with the secret moon program. I know that we're going. The legitimate military is actually putting together a secret moon shot, which is called Operation Clementine. I think a lot of what has been going on with Groom Lake, and I know this is going to sound like a wild statement, but I can tell you that I know this for a fact, that we have bases on the moon. We've got guys up there. We've got stuff going on the backside of the moon. We've got 4 locations in King Crater, Tycho Brahe, Van de Graaff, and Tsaroslavsky. Those 2 are on the backside of the moon.
Did you hear Richard Hoagland the other night?
No, I haven't. I haven't gotten a chance to. I really want to hear what he has to say, and I haven't. I haven't had a chance to get caught up with what he's saying.
Well, a lot of what you're saying ties into what he said.
Well, we have facilities up there. I have a photograph that was taken from the NASA archives of an object that looks exactly like the Aurora as it appeared on the front cover of Popular Science magazine, except this photograph is parked. This object is parked on the moon and was taken by Apollo 11 in 1969. So that gives you an idea of how far ahead they are. So from the information that I've got now, the majority of what was going on as far as the secret stuff at Area 51, and I have yet to check this because I just got the information about 2 days ago, has all been moved to a place called Pax River, Maryland. And I don't even know if there is such a place as Pax River, Maryland, but supposedly it's an underground facility. It could just be the code name for the facility as opposed to an actual location. But that Groom Lake is actually going to become now basically back in the hands of the military, which is why, and this is the weird part, is that when they're testing saucers, I mean, they didn't care. They barely had any security out there at all when they were flying the flying saucers right over our heads. But now that they're flying stealth bombers and, YF-22s and all kinds of really secret stuff, legit military stuff, now the whole military kicks into gear. And that was another reason why you had Wackenhut, private security guarding Area 51, and not what was called DISCO, the Defense Institute Strategic Command Organization.
Yes, correct. All right. So, is Wackenhut still guarding?
I don't know. That's the one piece of information I need to find out. If their security has gone back to legitimate military and gone out of the hands of Wackenhut, then you know that something has in fact changed. So I don't go out there as much as I did simply because there's not as much happening. Now, on encounters, the one thing that we are going to cover is that there have been reports, and I've got some videotape on this, that have been taken by some friends who've been out there, that the stuff that is actually being handled, that if there is any saucer stuff going on still out there, that the only way it can be seen, and this is a hint for all you Area 51 watchers, is you need second-generation night scope equipment. And that if you went out there, if you go out there with infrared and night scopes, apparently, well, from this video, the people standing in the video didn't know what was going on. The camera was set up in such a way, there was a video camera with a night scope on it. No one was looking in it. It was just pointing at the sky. But there are these disc-shaped objects moving all around, relatively close to the camera, and they were invisible to the naked eye.
Some of the second-generation Russian stuff available on the market is pretty reasonable.
They're $600-700.
Yeah, that's right.
But there is some saucer stuff going on out there, and that would make total sense. If it's a surveillance and reconnaissance project, when we were out there in 90-91, whoever was flying those things didn't look like they knew how. I mean, they were zipping back and forth, and the one that I saw that was real low was sort of bumping into Joshua trees and what have you.
Really? You think it was on-the-job training with new technology?
It's possible. It would make sense. I mean, that's why they would test on a Wednesday. Monday they would fly in all the pilots, and the pilots were, usually out partying or getting drunk on the weekends or what have you. So Monday was the day that they would lay out the mission specs for the week. Tuesday was what they'd call nuts and bolts day, where they got to look over the shoulders of the engineers and make sure the gauges were working and everything was working right. Wednesday, they were at their mental and physical peak, so they flew the mission. Thursday was usually debriefing, and it gave them actually an extra day if they wanted to do more flying or something didn't work right. And Friday was kind of barbecue day, where everybody got together and bonded and sort of swapped stories, and everybody flew home.
Boy, you know an awful lot about this.
Well, because my dad used to do it. He used to work out at that facility, and they used to fly him down from Reno to go work there. So, and that was back when it was, once again, legit military, back when Edwards Air Force Base was Muroc, and, he used to fly with Gus Grissom and Gordon Cooper and, Alan Shepard and Don Isley and, all the NASA Gemini friendship Apollo guys.
All right, Shawn, hang tight for a second. Shawn Morton is my guest, and we'll be right back. All right, Shawn, we've only got about a minute here. So to conclude on Area 51, you think it's now perhaps not what it used to be, and it's all been moved?
Correct. I think a lot of the saucers, or at least the physical stuff, has actually been moved to, as I said, that site I was talking about in Maryland, and possibly a lot of things in Idaho. But I'm still working on it, and when I find out exactly where it's all been moved, then I'll start going out and taking a look at it, and this whole thing will start all over again.
You think wherever it is right now, it is going to continue?
Oh yes.
Oh yes.
Oh yes, and it has, because it has a lot to do with, like I said, we've set up an entire moon program. I believe we do have bases that go back and forth to the moon.
All right. On that note, we're going to have to pause for the news at the top of the hour. We'll be back.
Okay.
Shawn Morton, stay right where you are. Everybody else, freeze. Here comes some information, and we'll be right back. This is CBC.
From the Kingdom of Nye, you're hearing Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Much more than just a talk show. To participate in the program, call toll-free 1-800-618-8255. That's 1-800-618-8255. This is the CBC Radio Network.
It absolutely is in the middle of yet another one, everybody, and it kind of caps off the week, I guess, the way it ought to go. My guest is Shawn Morton, and he is a literal dictionary, encyclopedia of all sorts of things that relate to stuff that we find interesting. Area 51, we've spent about the last hour on Area 51. He has co-authored a book with the guest that we had on a couple of days ago, the military gentleman who took off from Germany, AWOL, because of something that he and 5 of his military colleagues discovered when they played with a Ouija board. So we're going to talk about predictions as well with Shawn Morton. That'll be coming up in just a moment. Now, back to Shawn Morton. Shawn,
Yes, I am.
I've got a fax, Shawn, from St. Louis, and it says, all right, thank you. Please ask Shawn to comment on the Bolivian earthquake on 8 June 94 and any correlation to China's resumed nuclear testing.
Oh, boy.
So what about this earthquake?
Well, we spoke about this, I guess, the night before last.
Right.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with, the atomic testing is just, all I can say is it's insane. It's got to stop. It's so weakened the Earth's crust in so many different ways. The Bolivian earthquake was unique in the fact, and as I said, we talked about this about 2 nights ago on your show. It's significant because of the fact that it was 400 miles down. The magnitude of the quake on the old Richter scale was an 8.1, and on what's called the SW, the surface wave sensors, or the SWSs, it was I believe it came up at a 7.4. It's just the fact that at that particular side, it's basically, I believe, a precursor for a much larger quake in the New Madrid region. Because the quake was so far down, you're not now talking about just slip strike quakes or oblique strike quakes in which you have 2 land masses that are simply rubbing together. You're talking about a beginning of a fundamental shift in the actual crust or the mantle of the Earth.
Oh boy!
And so a quake that's that far down and relates directly to also the continental plate, the North American platelet, is very, very dangerous. And it's very dangerous primarily because of the New Madrid fault. Now, just to give you a very, very brief scientific lesson on how the geology of this whole thing works.
By all means.
The Southern California basically rests between 2 platelets, or should I say the whole western coast of California rests on something that's called the Juan de Fuco plate. And the Juan de Fuco plate butts up against the North American platelet and is in between what we call the Pacific platelet. And there's an area in the center of California that runs all the way from Sand Hills, or what's called the Cargo Muchacho Mountains, down by Yuma, Arizona, then runs up the center part of the state like a large boomerang up to Eureka, which is on the northern western coast of California. And this area in the center is sort of like a large, muddy, adobe, almost kind of silly putty-like zone that actually acts as a crust or a crux or a fulcrum point between the Juan de Fuco plate and the Pacific plate. Now, we've had, up until now, a lot of a very viscous fluid actually cushioning Southern California from a lot of these quakes, and of course that was oil. Now we've managed to take most of the oil out and replace it with soda, which is now causing even greater quakes because the soda doesn't have the viscosity anymore to cushion a lot of the quakes. The San Andreas Fault and a lot of the fault teams that run off the San Andreas and the entire Southern California area, and then the San Andreas, of course, runs up through San Francisco, have a lot of little fault teams that run off of it, so that when you have a flux in the pressure, you've got a lot of different ways for it to go. In other words, the pressure can go a lot of different ways, and it spreads up and down the state. The New Madrid Fault, on the other hand, and the edge of the New Madrid Fault actually runs underneath Austin, Texas, and then runs down by the Mississippi, and then comes up through sections of Arkansas and Tennessee.
Right.
And it's a large granite plate. And the center part of Texas, for example, hasn't had really a legitimate earthquake, I think, for about 160 years or so, because it's all solid. There aren't any faults there. The New Madrid Fault, on the other hand, has the potential of basically building up energy over a long period of time and then releasing violently all at once, because it's just one big piece.
Yeah, it's got a big reputation for storing up the energy.
Yes, and it hasn't gone for a long time, and very few people realize that that the biggest quake in continental U.S. history was the New Madrid Fault. As I said, about I think it was about 60 years ago, there was like an 8.6.
Did it really cause the Mississippi to run backwards?
In certain points it did, yes. As a matter of fact, because the landmass began to rise in areas, and then the Mississippi ran back and then, of course, ran forward again.
Wow.
What you're seeing now, and specifically with the last lunar eclipse that we had, with that lunar eclipse basically eclipsing the United States and then centering over the whole midwestern part of the United States, is you've seen, as of the 10th of May, not only an activation in the fault lines in California, but also a major activation in the New Madrid Fault. And that quake in Bolivia was actually felt as far up as Canada. Why? Because it rocked that platelet on the eastern seaboard running up through the Midwest. It went all the way up through the New Madrid Fault. So that tells you that the New Madrid Fault is basically ready for a major release of energy. And I think that release of energy is going to possibly come at some point this summer, possibly within the next 90 to 120 days.
Brother, remember, you've got a lot of people in St. Louis listening to you right now and all across that fault line. Okay, well, let me tell them, you see, my work, and we didn't really talk about this much in the beginning, I publish a newsletter called the Delphi Associates Newsletter. And in the Delphi Associates Newsletter, which I started last year, I began it because, and I know this sounds kind of odd because of the work that I've done with Area 51 and the writing that I've done, but I'd worked as a sensitive for a long time. I'd worked with the Los Angeles Police Department under something they called Unit 9 here, as far as, whenever they have a case they can't solve, there were a group of psychics that actually worked for them. I guess psychics has kind of a bad reputation now, but as a sensitive, I was predicting these events. I was tuning in, using a Tibetan meditation technique to tune into the planet, and I would then get pockets of energy that would then come up from out of the earth. And at first, before I was writing the newsletter, I would write registered letters to the Hermosa Beach Police Department. They had an earthquake center here in Redondo Beach where I would then report what I was feeling to them, and then things would begin to occur. So I started publishing the newsletter quite specifically because I was having these visions, and I would begin writing the visions down, and I needed to publish the newsletter to be able to get the visions out there and then date them to give some validity to the things that I'm seeing. All right, I want to know a little bit about your background. You lived in a Tibetan monastery, and in fact, you lived in the Dalai Lama's compound, and that's pretty wild stuff. How in the world did you get from that to where you are today?
Well, it was a very, very long journey, and it's just always been for me a constant seeking for what I felt was spiritual truth and spiritual reality. I was raised a good Irish Catholic. My parents then became Lutherans, and then from the time I was about 10 years old or so, I studied fundamentalist Christianity, basically taking apart the Bible and the original languages and actually going back to the church where I studied and completing a course to the satisfaction of the reverend there to actually get my degree in theology. Mm-hmm. And then I was in the business world for a long time, and I ran very popular nightclubs in Southern California, and I got really sick of it all. I just was finding that that I wasn't getting the kind of spiritual fulfillment that I needed. That it was a very fast scene. It was a very fast lifestyle, a lot of beautiful women, and the whole Hollywood deal, which I just started to find completely vapid and vacuous. And
interesting. Ted Turner, who owns CNN and a lot more, said once, "Success is actually kind of an empty bag."
Oh yeah, it is. It is. So in 1986, I had a lot of money. Actually, it was in '85, and I'd used a lot of my psychic abilities to make tens of thousands of dollars off the stock market. I turned about $5,000 into almost $150,000 in about 3 years in the stock market.
Uh-huh.
So I managed to basically I just rented my house and sold a lot of stuff that I had, and I just started traveling around the world. And it was there that I traveled to India, and I lived in India for a period of time. And I lived at the Dalai Lama's compound in Dharamsala in northern India. And it was the Dalai Lama who told me to go to this monastery that I lived in called Tengbache. And Tengbache is at the foot of Amadam Lam. It's in Nepal, just about 60 miles or so from the border of Tibet. Mm-hmm. You could actually see, if you climb up on one of the mountains, you could see on a good day Mount Everest down the valley there. And I lived at this monastery for 8 months. And there I specifically trained in earth healing techniques, prayer, meditation, astral travel, a lot of the things, just basically the things that they taught, the basic skills of learning how to control the mind, how to quiet the spirit, how to center oneself. And once you get to that point, you can then pick up the energy and pick up the feeling of the planet.
Now, I'm curious,
when things are going to happen.
Did you get the answers that you wanted?
I think, yeah, I did. There's a whole other story as to how it happened. I got the training that I needed to get the answers that I wanted. I suppose that's what I needed to do.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So there's your background.
But it gave me a solid background in fundamentalist Christianity, a solid background in the original languages and the original texts of the ancient scriptures, a solid background in Hinduism, in Tibetan Buddhism. I then, when I was back in the United States, I studied with a lot of American Indian elders here because I wanted a cosmology. I very much feel that in the coming days ahead, as the times get more dangerous, a lot of people are going to be returning, obviously, to a much more spiritual lifestyle.
Yes.
And that there's very much a difference between having a religion and being spiritual.
Is that process underway now?
I think so. I think you're seeing it in mass. I think it's why you're having the millennium mania that's coming up in a lot of the magazines as we approach the year 2000. The year 2000 it's kind of a boogaboo because everybody's afraid of it. Everybody is kind of gets antsy when we're going to turn, turn the big 0 year.
That's right.
The naysayers will say, well, in the year 999, everybody was getting nervous and they were having these same things about the end of the world. It's unfortunate because now there are so many cycles that are coming to a head right now. I mean, right now, the next 10 years or so, we're at the end of the United States' political cycle. This country was not really started in 1776. It was actually started between 1789 and 1791 when the Bill of Rights was put in place and George Washington put his hand on the Bible April 30th of 1789. So we're at the end of a 200-year political cycle. We're at the end of a 2,000-year astrological cycle, moving out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. We're at the end of a 5,000-year lunar cycle as well, where the planet is going to get very hot. You're going to have a lot of volcanic activity, a lot of earthquake activity. We're at the end of the Mayan calendar, which what they call the sixth sun, which was the eclipse in Mexico in July of 1991. We're also coming to a head as far as a large number of Nostradamus' prophecies about the year 2000 and beyond. And I'm not saying that the world is going to end in the year 2000. I'm saying that there are going to be some very great wars, that there's going to be massive conflict across the globe, and that mankind is going to fight one last long war where all of the negative forces can be literally swept together so they can be crushed once and for all. And after that phase, we have a rebuilding period in civilization, which is going to lead, I believe, to a absolutely marvelous, very amazing new world. But, Santa Claus isn't going to come and give it to us. We're going to have to work for it very, very, very hard.
All right. You mentioned volcanoes. On through California and on up into Washington, what do they have to look forward to?
Well, right now, in my meditations, and I'm sitting here, I'm looking at a map of the United States right in front of me. In my meditations, and you've heard a lot of things over the last couple of days about June 16th and about June 9th and what have you. What I'm seeing is that San Diego is very hot. In my last newsletter, which was the 15th of May, I talked about quakes in San Diego specifically and aftershocks in Los Angeles, with my date being the 24th. Well, I hit it right on in the last newsletter. There were 3 earthquakes in San Diego on the 23rd, and then there was a 4.5 aftershock in Los Angeles right on the 24th. Southern California is actually fairly calm right now. What I am seeing, however, is I'm seeing pressure beginning to build up near Vallejo and up in San Francisco. And nothing huge, but there will be, I believe, within about the next 2 weeks, a quake of note in the San Francisco area, specifically around the Vallejo, Santa Rosa, Novato area. The area that's very, very hot at the moment is Klamath Falls and Bend, Oregon.
Really?
And remember that when you have quakes in the center part of Northern California moving up through Oregon and eventually culminating right at Mount Rainier.
Right.
Mount Rainier sits on the top of a large earthquake flue, or should I say, I'm sorry, a volcano flue. And there is a huge amount of magma, a magma bubble, which volcanists call a pluton, that's making its way up towards the surface. And as this pluton, which is very, very large, begins to make its way up towards the surface, it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to cause cracks in the Earth's surface, which is going to cause much, much greater earthquakes, or the pressure has to be relieved via a volcano. Now, this side of the planet is actually naturally very, very hot. That's why it's called the Ring of Fire. So there is a great deal of validity to the fact that Mount Rainier is getting ready to go. And if Mount Rainier goes, this would fall in directly to the Indian prophecy, which talked about when Little Sister speaks, Big Brother will answer. Little Sister specifically being Mount St. Helens, blowing in May of 1980. If Mount Rainier goes, Mount Rainier has the potential of causing a great deal more damage. The weak side of Mount Rainier faces Seattle. The mountain's about 14,000 feet high with a very, very large mantle around the outside of it, which is ice and rock with a lot of trapped gases. There's been earthquake activity at the base of Mount Rainier.
I've been hearing rumors about venting and that sort of thing on Rainier. Have you heard any of that, Shawn?
Yes, it's vented quite a few times in just the last 3 to 4 months. As a matter of fact, it's considered the most dangerous volcano in the Northern Hemisphere by geologists. I don't know how much they're actually going to tell the people. I know that 2 months ago there was a vent of steam that rose very, very high. There have been a large number of quakes in the 1.5 to 2.5 range. Vance Davis put it very well because it was one of his predictions that a 5.4 quake would occur somewhere in the Seattle area directly before the eruption of Mount Rainier, and I would agree with that particular trigger. Mount Rainier has the potential, if it blows, of literally dumping enough ash and enough soot and enough junk into the atmosphere that it could quite conceivably lower the temperature of the North American continent by almost 3 degrees.
Wow.
Now, Mount Pinatubo, all the way in the Philippines, lowered the temperature of North America by 1 degree, and you're now seeing all of the winters that have occurred all across the Midwest and all in the East, and all the killer winters that you've had there have been a direct relation to not only Mount Pinatubo, but the fact that the Earth's magnetic pole is beginning to shift. It's already shifted about 1.5 to almost 2 degrees. You're having, as a matter of fact, out where you are, and up in Reno and Lake Tahoe, you have a lot of Canadian geese now settling in that area.
That's right.
Because they think it's Canada now. Because the magnetic pole has actually shifted. And we're getting now in the Midwest all of the winters that Siberia used to get.
I had R.W. Whitfield on the program.
Yep.
He thought the magnetic poles would shift. There would be one very quick shift. Do you agree with that?
It's possible. It seems to be shifting very gradually now. However, there does seem to be, in what I see in my visions, I don't see the planet flipping all the way over as many people see. I don't think, unless there is a meteor, and the visions that I've had are that there is a meteor that strikes the Earth, but it's very, very far off in the distant future. Well, it's like 20.
Do you know where it strikes?
Or so. Pardon me?
Do you know where it strikes?
I'd have a vision that it strikes in the Atlantic Ocean, in the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean, and inundates Europe virtually almost immediately.
All right. I've heard others say it will strike in Nevada. I just wanted to be sure that that wasn't where you thought it was going to strike.
I don't think so. I mean, it could hit anywhere, but...
Well, that's true. All right, Shawn, hold on. We're at the bottom of the hour. Shawn Morton is my guest. And at least here's one guest who says it will not be Nevada that evaporates in a meteor strike or whatever. For that, I'm thankful. We'll be back with more from the CBC Radio Network.
This is the end of side 1. Please leave the cassette exactly where it is, flip it over, and begin again.
From the Kingdom of Nye, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the CBC Radio Network.
Well, my guest is Shawn Morton. We'll get back to Shawn in just a moment. Fascinating session once again this morning. It's been quite a week, hasn't it? Shawn's talking about UFOs, Area 51. Shawn's talking about predictions for the next 30 years, very specific predictions. And we'll get back to Shawn Morton in just a moment. Shawn?
Yes, sir.
Okay, welcome back again.
Thank you.
I would like to begin to take some calls. Are you up for that?
I am. Let me just mention for anybody that wants to actually get the Gulf Breeze Prophecies, which I co-wrote with Vance, or my book, The Millennium Factor. Can I give a number out? Is that okay?
Of course.
The telephone number is 310-217-7579. That's 310-217-7579, and I have the Delphi Associates newsletter, which you can subscribe to, 12-issue subscription. We've also got the Millennium Factor, which I wrote, and then, of course, the Gulf Breeze Prophecies, which has Vance's predictions and prophecies. That was written in '93, and then my book was written in 1992.
By the way, you have reviewed Shawn's prophecies, Vance's prophecies,
yes.
And what is his percentage of success?
Well, when Vance and I originally came together, I had heard about Vance's case in 1990 because I was in Gulf Breeze working with his documentary crew when they got arrested. I put together some information on him. I'd never actually seen the prophecies or predictions. I had pitched the story to Unsolved Mysteries. They didn't buy it. Sightings actually bought it from somebody else. And then Vance and I sort of came together after his Sightings appearance. And I thought, well, let's get together and let's tell the story. And the reason I got together with him was because he and I were seeing so much of the same thing that we thought it'd be great to actually pool our resources and kind of fit the pieces together.
By the way, I am, for some reason, in touch with the Ancient Prophecies television show people. Are you tied in with them at all?
I would certainly like to be. I know...
I can arrange it.
I know Coast to Coast Productions, I think, is putting it together, and... I've had some people try to get in touch with them. If you could arrange it, I'd certainly love to be on, Art. If you have any pull over there, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, I know the director of the program is a fan of the show, and he's listening right now. How's that?
Okay, great. Well, I sent them off a package of newsletters in which I'd predicted the Northridge quake. I predicted the actions that are happening in Korea. I had predicted... Korea. I wanted to ask you about Korea. You've got some information on Korea. What do you know? I can only tell you some of it without actually putting some people in danger. So I can tell you that 72 hours ago, we sent... I can't tell you how many, but I can tell you that we sent B-52 bombers, we sent YF-22 stealth fighters, and we sent 2 stealth bombers. And they are, as we speak, in Japan. And you should see within the next week basically strategical strike attacks against North Korea. Now... the same intelligence source, and he called me actually about... Wait a minute.
Are you talking, Shawn, about some sort of pinpoint attack on their nuclear facilities?
Yes. I'm not sure if it's going to work, though. North Korea just isn't Iraq. There's a big difference here, but you can expect an attack against North Korea. We've got the green light. I had one of my sources wake me up at 3:15 in the morning, a guy that's very, very high up in the military who simply said, it's a go. We're on. We're going. All the stuff is being shipped now.
Well, to use a term, what is your confidence level of this information?
100%. 100%.
100%.
The stuff is there.
Shawn, if we do something like that, it will start a war.
Well, the problem is that this same source was telling me, and it was on this man's word, that the Gulf War stopped. It was this man's word that said, look, Saddam Hussein has 2 nuclear weapons. He's got them pointed, one at Tel Aviv and the other one at Jeddah, and unless you stop right now, he's going to use them. And that's when we drew the line in the sand and said, okay, we'll leave you alone now. this same source, because this guy used to work counterterrorism for the company, told me that North Korea has had 6 atomic weapons for a period of time, 2 very, very old, obsolete ones, and 4 fairly new ones. And that now they were working on they had just apparently, it's not so much the atomic weapons and the plutonium we're upset about, they had just perfected the delivery systems for them, which means, and remember, that North Korea, in developing these missiles, last year they were lobbing missiles up and they lost control of a missile that missed downtown Tokyo by 70 miles. And that was about a year and almost a year and 2 months ago.
I can tell you that this evening the tensions are up between North and South Korea. Both of their militaries are on heightened alert,
yes.
And we're over there testing our anti-missile as best we can. They're exercising it like crazy, so something is about to pop.
Well, it's oh goodness. I mean, all I can do is hope that it doesn't happen. I mean, I am seeing some kind of attack on Tokyo. I'm seeing. I mean, hopefully we'll be able to stop it. And this gets into a lot of the prophetic work that I was talking about, and the fact that I've been seeing an attack, a bomb missing Tokyo and destroying a building that's outside of Tokyo and taking out a large region of a place called Mount Fujiyama.
Wow.
So things are going to get very nasty over there very, very quickly.
All right.
And this leads into a whole list of prophecies that I have coming up for the next year. So.
All right, we'll get to those. Let's get to a couple of calls.
Okay.
On the toll-free line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, sir. Where are you?
KSD, St. Louis.
St. Louis. All right.
How you doing? Who's this?
This is John.
Hi, John.
Hello, Shawn.
Hi.
Boy, this is kind of frightening stuff here. I begin to feel my heart rate increase just hearing you talk about this. But
well, go ahead. No, I'm sorry. The point of prophecy, John, and the point of actually doing predictions, and maybe I should stress this more to your audience, Art, is that the point of this is the fact that being forewarned is to be forearmed, and understanding that there are certain events and certain predictions that are about to occur gives us the ability of some foreknowledge to either prepare for them or to pray and meditate to be able to stop or diffuse situations. Every religion in the world has an aspect of what I call biorelativity, that whether it's Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Baha'i, Sufism, all the various religions of the world all talk about the fact that unless you behave in a certain manner, unless civilization takes a certain course, that the earth itself will begin to strike back at you, and that the land upon which you live will begin to literally fester with fires and earthquakes and hurricanes and natural catastrophes, and the large number of wars that the United States are in, along with the catastrophes of biblical proportions, have a lot to do with the ending of the United States as a political power. Have a great deal to do with the fact that we're at the end of this 200-year cycle where we have not done certain things. We have not lived up to certain expectations, or should I say, lived up to certain biblical laws, and this country is in fact being punished. And unless the country begins to break up and begin to re-empower its people and the individuals within it, begins to realize that you can't leave the power in the hands of a few people for very long, and everything without everything just going straight to hell.
Yeah.
Well, okay, Shawn.
If I may, I've got a question.
All right. We'll get to it in just 1 second, sir. Shawn, you're talking to somebody sitting on top of the New Madrid Fault.
Yes.
What advice would you give him?
You guys are going to have some problems this summer because the New Madrid Fault, closer to the Texas and Mississippi, is, in my opinion, getting ready to release a great deal of energy. I think you're probably going to see it by. You're going to see a substantial eruption by as late as August. You're looking at quakes. You need to look at quakes in the Southern California area as precursors to the New Madrid Fault, because the Southern California quakes, and specifically the quakes in California, as they begin to rattle, send this energy across the United States, across the continental platelet, which then builds up more and more and more pressure for that one huge fault to begin to to begin to ripple and rupture. And as the quakes in California get worse, the continent itself is actually going to be rocking back and forth.
All right, caller, you had a point or a question.
Yes, sir. If you recall, Art, I don't know whether it was Vance or a caller the other night talking about how they were saying something that a lot of things around the world were going to be happening and so forth, and though the United States was going to be kind of left alone, nothing was going to happen here, but yet it was the cause of all the other. And I'm wondering if that it got me thinking of your intro that night as well, talking about Rwanda and Bosnia and so forth.
Right.
And I'm wondering if, in our, diplomacy or looking for all of the world to become a democratic government, and, all the things that the U.S. government is trying to promote here and there and everywhere, if that's, caused an uproar with people throughout the world and so forth.
All right, sir. Thank you. Shawn, are we going to be left alone? Are we the cause, basically, of a lot of this? And are we, I guess it's your view, we are not going to be left alone.
Well, when you're talking about left alone, I don't think the United States is going to be invaded. It's sort of like the story of the farmer that has a son who goes out and breaks his leg and becomes lame, and all the other people in the town say, "Oh, it's so terrible. What's happened to your son? It's such an evil thing." And the farmer says, "Well, how do you know?" And the next day, the emperor comes and takes children and all the other sons in the town to go fight and die in a war, except the one farmer's son because he's broken his leg. I see the natural catastrophes in the United States, even though there's going to be a great deal of destruction, not a lot of loss of life at first, because there's going to be warnings. The planet itself is going to begin to warn us to get out of harm's way. But the geological disasters are going to continue to bankrupt the federal government, continue to bankrupt state governments, and basically lead to a breakup of power, very much like the Black Plague did in Europe, breaking the hold that the Catholic Church had and centralized government had on Europe. I think you're going to see a political renaissance in the United States as the federal government begins to collapse. You're going to see a series of states begin to secede from the Union, and I've been saying this since 1990, that it's going to be a foot race between Texas, Alaska, or Hawaii as to who is going to be the first state to actually say, we've had enough, secede from the federal union and actually become an independent country, an independent republic. And it will be this secession of the states that will then lead to a political, scientific, and cultural renaissance in America that has been unparalleled in hundreds of years.
Well, that's quite a prediction. All right, Shawn, let's take another call. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hello.
Good morning, Art.
Hello.
This is, good morning, Shawn.
Good morning. Who's this?
This is Shawn.
Hi, Shawn. Good name.
This is Shawn calling from Last Best Place, Montana. Anyways, Shawn, I have a question for you. You were talking about Vallejo there and Nevada and stuff. What about Mount Diablo?
Mount Diablo.
So you're talking about Mount Diablo along the, you mean right near Parkfield, the Cheyenne Range? Are you talking about the Diablo Range?
No, I'm talking about Mount Diablo. They're sitting right outside of the East Bay, say just over the hills from Berkeley, which I do think would...
Oh, it's in... Okay, I know what you're talking about. It's Mill Valley. It's right next to... Okay, right. I'm from Northern California originally.
Same here.
The San Andreas Fault actually runs right down through Mill Valley. One of the things that I discovered when I was doing my predictions on the Northridge Fault was that last spring I felt that the Southern California quake, and I've been predicting this since last April, that to look for a quake that would occur between December 25th and January 7th. I missed the Northridge quake by 10 days. But I got the exact epicenter of it because I felt that there was going to be some kind of artificially induced quake in the Southern California region. And here's what's very, very interesting, is that I began to study about what we call ELF transmitting stations. And there were a number of military experiments where the military got together with the United States Geological Survey, and I know this is going to sound nuts, but it's been in all the papers here in California. The U.S. Geological Survey and the military had buried a string of bombs from Seal Beach in Southern California all the way up to the China Lake Naval Weapons Test Center, and then down to the 29 Palms Marine Corps Base. And last October, they were going to ignite these bombs.
I heard about that, Shawn.
It was called Operation Shockwave.
Right.
And Shockwave was going to ignite these bombs, and they said they were relatively small. They were like 25,000 to about 60,000-pound, what they call cheese cutters, ammonium nitrate bombs.
Cheese cutters.
Well, that's because they're made out of fertilizer. That's why they call them cheese cutters. And these bombs were going to be detonated in 2 to 6 minute intervals, creating a sympathetic resonance wave, which was then going to go to China Lake and then come down to 29 Palms. Well, the Landers quake in June 28th of 1992, the actual epicenter of this huge 7.6 quake was the southwest corner of the 29 Palms Marine Corps base. Now, there was such an uproar about this that it got so much publicity that the USGS and the military announced that they were going to postpone the testing for, I believe it was 9 months. And, of course, that means that October 25th was when it was supposed to start, so they're going to start testing this stuff again. When? The end of July, which is right smack dab in the center of when California is going to be the most vulnerable as far as earthquakes go, because it's very hot during the day and very cold at night. And then you had a whole operation that was going on directly off the coast, which was called Operation Ship Shock, in which they were burying 75,000-pound ammonium nitrate bombs right on the continental shelf, not only on the continental shelf, but at the mouth of the Camarillo Fault, which is exactly where the Northridge quake happened. Now, hang with me, because this relates to Vallejo. There are 3 major ELF testing stations in California and Nevada. Edwards Air Force Base, Beatty, Nevada, and Moffett Field in Northern California. Because they're working with sound, I began to work with a map, and if you draw concentric circles outwards from those 3 areas, you will notice that the 3 concentric circles from those areas intersect at Flagstaff, Arizona, where they had a 5.6 quake in April. It was the first quake they'd had there in almost 65 years.
Right.
Vallejo, which is directly above San Francisco, it's just the other side of the bridge from Oakland, and at the exact epicenter of the Northridge quake. Exact epicenter. And that's what allowed me to actually call where the epicenter was going to be, because it fit right into this triangle where if they were in fact inducing quakes in Southern California, this is where they would do it.
All right, let me try and pin down exactly how you predicted the quake, Shawn. In other words, how do you document the fact that you accurately predicted it?
Because we got on the air so quickly here, I sent a whole stack of material to you, of newsletters and what have you. I published my newsletter on the 15th of October of 1993. And I had said that we were beginning to enter a phase where you would see massive fires in a ring around L.A. County, and I named the cities where they would in Malibu and all the way around in a ring to Laguna Beach, and that at that point, once the fires started, you would then get approximately a 60-day cycle, and then within 60 days we would have a major event in Southern California. And I pinpointed the quake as being Northridge because I saw that was where the ELF testing was going on.
Okay, that's in print. In other words, I can go someplace and with the materials you send me, I'll read that you're predicting a quake in the Northridge area.
Yes, sir. And it's in the October issue of the Delphi Associates newsletter.
That is impressive.
And as I said, you'll have it in your hands tomorrow. I'm sorry I sent it off to you
it's quite all right.
Mail today.
Quite all right.
Okay, so when I was seeing this, and part of what I do is I take prayer groups of people out to areas that I feel are sensitive, and we do everything that we can to pray and meditate and bring in the force of the creation and see if the Lord can give us a little bit of leeway here to begin to transmute the energy. We did this last April, and I had predicted that there would be very, very large quakes in May of 1993. I then put out in the newsletter that the energy had somehow dissipated. Every earthquake sensitive that I was talking to felt that something had been relieved, and I was the first person to state, I predicted these quakes, I'm going to be wrong, nothing's going to happen in May, we're going to be fine. And if you'll remember, at that same time, Gordon Michael Scallion, Jack Cole's Earthquake Hotline Service, Jim Birkeland, everybody was saying that May, everything was building, and then some reason the energy just magically vanished. So here I'm still, and the quake that I was picking up, when I sense quakes, if it's natural, I'll feel a building, as I'm looking forward into the future, I'll feel a building of the energy of the Earth that then begins to crack. It's like a logical progression. But what I was seeing is I was seeing something that was happening very quickly, almost like a straight up and down line, almost like a stock graph. And I thought, well, what could cause this? And I kept getting this image of man-made, man-made, man-made. And then I began to realize, my goodness, that this quake somehow is going to be artificially induced. And when I began to realize this, and then I said, I'm getting this vision then suddenly all the information starts pouring in about shockwave, about ship shock, about the United States Geological Survey and Caltech actually teaming up with the U.S. military. And whenever you have a geological organization getting together with a military organization, what are they looking for? They're looking for a geologic weapon, a seismic weapon of some kind.
Shawn, why do you think you can see these things?
I think a lot of people are going to be able to see them. I think I'm just the first wave of a group of people who are going to be able to, are naturally going to become more sensitive, going to feel the energy of the Earth well before it happens. I think it's going to have to become a matter of survival in the future to become more in tune with the Earth, more in tune with the planet itself, and feel the energy that's coming up out of her. Why can I see this? I've had visions ever since I was very, very young, and then I went and I got the training to specifically hone a natural ability that I already possessed.
Is that what your time in Tibet was about?
Yes. That was 90% of it.
Boy, a lot of this is pretty chilling stuff, Shawn. All right, stand by. We're going to the news at the top of the hour. We'll be right back. My guest is Shawn Morton. I sense you're listening carefully. We'll be back.
In the Kingdom of Nye, toll free at 1-800-618-8255. 1-800-618-TALK. First time callers 702-727-1222. 702-727-1222. Or use the wildcard line at 702-727-1295. This is Coast to Coast AM on the CBC Radio Network.
It absolutely is. Good morning, everybody. And a lot of stations now join us, and so I'm going to have to do a little catch-up here. I will begin by, warning you that I have a guest. It is a warning. His name is Shawn Morton, and it is a warning because of some of because of the nature of some of the things that he's saying, predicting, and talking about. If you are disturbed by hearing predictions, if you are disturbed by hearing things that challenge you, then this would be a good opportunity for you to tune out. This is a very interesting individual. A B.A. in political science, a Bachelor of Fine Arts in drama, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, the British University of Cairo, Egypt, and a man who lived in a Tibetan monastery at the foot of Mount Everest for 7 months. A man who spent time with, lived in the compound with, the Dalai Lama. Somebody who's worked on Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation, and has been intimately involved in any number of UFO issues. The Billy Meyer case, for one. He has a psychic background. And he's just a fascinating individual. His name is Shawn Morton, and we're going to go back to him right now. We've been talking for 2 hours. It would be impossible to catch you up on everything. We spent an hour, the first, on Area 51. The second has been spent primarily in discussing predictions. I should tell you that Shawn has co-authored a book with my guest the other evening, Vance, who was one of the military six. He's co-author of a book with Vance. And now, once again, Shawn Morton. Shawn, I had to go through that because we've got a lot of affiliates just joining.
Well, thank you, Art. And like I say, I'm just thoroughly enjoying myself. You're just, once again, I can't say enough nice things about you. You're a fabulous host and a very, very talented man, and I really do appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you. 2 questions, both of them in by fax, Shawn.
Okay.
The New Madrid earthquake that you're talking about, is that prediction part of the Ouija board predictions from Columbus, Missouri?
No.
No, it isn't.
I didn't have anything to do with Vance's predictions at all. I came along simply as an individual who thought the story was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Vance and I were getting very much the same things. Vance had some access to some very high-level military information, which I needed for some research that I was doing, and I wrote the book basically in an interview format with Vance. Now, as far as the 50 predictions that he's put out, they did predict a massive earthquake in Southern California in late 1993, and of course they, missed that prediction by 17 days, which is close enough for a spitting contest, as they say. They did back in 1990 predict the Gulf War. They did predict that the major gun laws would be passed in 1994. So they've been, they keep coming true one by one, and of course the next thing that Vance was seeing, that I was seeing, and a lot of other people are seeing, is is a major eruption of Mount Rainier. As far as the New Madrid Fault going, as I said, you have to watch. As far as the New Madrid Fault goes, let me give you a list of what I see happening, and this is specifically since we're talking about these predictions. First off, only God knows when most of this stuff is actually going to happen. What I see is that I see chains of events, and I see that when one thing happens, that a number of other things occur. It's very much doing this kind of work. When I get a vision or where I see a picture of something happening, it's very much like channel surfing in the dark without a TV guide. It's about 20% inspiration and about 80% perspiration. Because when I get these flashes and these images, I try to coordinate as much information as possible to try to verify the things that I'm saying.
Can you in some way describe to us who do not see what you see, how you see it? Do you see it in kind of a physical sense?
Well, the first thing I see is that like for example, I've got a big map right here in front of me, and I'll close my eyes, do a meditation technique, and I can then run my hands over a map. And I can actually feel energy coming up out of the earth as to where energy is coming to a point. I'll then place my hand over an area that I feel is hot on the map, and I'll actually take it day by day, where I'll say, June 11th, June 12th, June 13th, and either go day by day or month by month, and then I will see windows as to when these things will actually occur just by holding my hands over a map and then projecting myself forward first month by month, and then when I get a hit, I'll go day by day, and then I will actually begin to get images and actually heat coming from the map.
All right, well, that coincides with another facts I've got. I heard Shawn say that Klamath Falls and Grants Pass are hot areas. What does he mean by hot areas?
I mean that they're primed and ready for a pretty substantial earthquake event. And that when those areas begin to go up near Klamath in the center part of the border of California and Oregon, that isn't so much earthquake activity as it is magma activity, which means that area will begin to ignite places like Mount St. Helens, Mount Hood, going up into what I'm eventually seeing, which is the very, very northern part of the Pacific Northwest, being Seattle and Mount Rainier, being just scorching. I mean, in my visions, I can barely look at it because the whole area on a map will glow a very, very white, hot, reddish color.
Oh, boy.
And I'm seeing the whole Pacific Northwest building in this. Now, Southern California, again, after the Northridge earthquake, the energy that was building up around Southern California has very much dissipated. It's been how can I say, it's just gone. I mean, it seems very, very quiet.
Exhausted.
Yes.
All right. Do you want to give us, aside from what you've just said, any other predictions that you have?
Okay. This is what I'm laying down, and this is basically what I'm writing the newsletter on right now. I'm seeing events within the next 30 days in California that will be adjustment quakes. They will not be massive. Everybody's talking about June 16th as being, there's been a lot of very weird stories in Southern California with people who are picking up men dressed in white, and they say that June 16th is when the first trumpet will sound, and then the men disappear. I'm getting a line, by the way, on somebody who supposedly actually had this happen, and when I find the person that this actually happened to, I will get them in touch with you. So you can
by all means, please do.
Okay, because I just got a call from Channel 9. I have an old girlfriend that runs the news desk over there, and she called me and said, I've got a witness of somebody that actually saw this happen. So she's going to interview her, and then I'll get a hold of her, and then I'll slide her over to you.
Please do. And touch on one other thing for me, Shawn.
Yes, sir.
Again, because so many stations have joined us, what you had to say about Korea last hour was very important. Please repeat it.
Okay. That basically, what I can tell you is that about 72 hours ago, we sent a squadron of B-52s there, along with YF-22 stealth fighters and stealth bombers. They're, as we speak, in Tokyo now. From the same source that gave me that, he talked about how the Koreans, it was in his opinion that the Koreans, and this was a man who used to work counterterrorism, that North Korea had, in fact, 6 atomic weapons, 2 old-style ones and 4 newer ones, that they had just, what we're most worried about, had just developed the delivery systems, specifically the guidance systems and what have you, to be able to possibly take a shot at Tokyo. And we've answered that. I mean, just today in the news, I believe it was Clinton who said that if a nuclear attack in fact takes place, that would be the end of North Korea, and we're getting ready to go in guns blazing to do something about it. I don't know how we can't. We've got to go in and take out some of these positions because we can't just leave a loose cannon like North Korea just kind of laying around.
Well, since you're in the business of predictions, how do you see this unwinding? In other words, what do you see happening?
Okay, and like I said, this comes from the 20% inspiration, 80% perspiration part of this here. There is, and I know this might sound like getting off another subject, but it'll come back around to it. There are a number of predictions that I have been studying along with the head of my research department, Robert Egan, of Nostradamus. And the Nostradamus quatrains specifically point to a large number of events that are going to occur in a year with a bearded star. Now, this bearded star has not existed up until about a year and a half ago when we discovered Shoemaker-Levy 9. And Shoemaker-Levy 9 is about ready to crash into Jupiter over 7 days between the 18th of July and the 25th.
Right.
Nostradamus had a whole string of these prophecies, and when you see the photographs that I've got from JPL, its star really looks like it's got a beard. It's got like a little pointy beard or what looks like a hat on it, and on the front page of Time magazine, they were calling it a bearded star or an angel wing comet, and that this comet was going to strike Jupiter and then cause these massive eruptions. In the research that we've been doing, we've been finding these remarkable prophecies that directly relate to the, quote, run of the bearded star, unquote, which, of course, end on the 25th of July. One of these prophecies specifically, and we felt strongly enough about this to actually send letters to the White House, and we have had actual conversations with the Secret Service where we were called up into the offices, and at first they thought I was, actually Bob Egan went down in San Diego, and then I went and saw the guys up here in Westwood, where at first they said, okay, well, and it was concerning President Clinton. And I want to state now and for the record that I wish the man no harm. I don't want anybody doing anything to him. I don't plan on doing anything to him myself, but I was having a very specific vision of him. In my book, The Millennium Factor, printed in 92, I predicted his election. I predicted the exact percentage he would win by. I predicted that his presidency would be riddled with scandal, and that he would be, in my opinion, as a visionary, assassinated.
When?
I believe that the assassination may, in fact, occur before the 25th of July, and that's what we put in the registered letters. And when we went and spoke to the Secret Service, and at first they said, well, we get crazy things like this all the time, I said, you're more than welcome to check my LAPD record and check my Unit 9 credentials, and that I've worked with police departments before doing what it is I do.
How did they react?
He had a guy come in and he said, check this for me, and then after that I waited in the hallway for a second, and the guy came in and said, Mr. Morton, would you like some coffee, sir? And he was actually very nice to me after that happened. We have, according to these Nostradamus predictions, and as I said, we felt strong enough about them to actually tell the Secret Service.
Can you tell me where?
At first we thought that it was going to be it has something to do with Bosnia, it has something to do with foreign affairs, and it has something to do with a Serbian. And it looks as though whatever's happening around it, it looks as though something has to do with boats or ships. I see swords and bayonets. I was very much terrified for his life when he was in Europe. And people were commenting on the TV that he was just walking around Europe with no protection whatsoever.
Right.
I know the Secret Service hates his guts. Because and this goes all the way back to the 3 guys that got popped at Waco that were his private bodyguards.
Yeah, well, that emotion is not limited to the Secret Service.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, we're talking about the safety of the president.
Right, so you can't bump off a king without having the cooperation of the palace guard. So, anyway, we gave the warning, and we felt it was going to happen between the 1st of June and the 25th of July, and that it would have something to do with Serbia, that it could, in fact, be a Serbian who assassinates President Clinton, possibly. And this is weird because it fits into a whole other pattern with him getting involved in Serbia. McKinley in the 1890s, who was elected in 1892, who was the 8th president after Lincoln, was assassinated by a Serbian. Now we've got Clinton, who's the 8th president after Kennedy, who's getting involved with the Serbians once again elected in 1992, 100 years later, with the possibility here of him actually, of the Serbians doing something to him.
All right, let me fit in a couple of calls here. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hello.
Yes, KSMA, Santa Maria.
Santa Maria, yes, sir.
Yeah, I've got a comment, a question, and a prediction.
All right.
He spoke of the Antichrist in the beginning of the show, and I believe, and my adrenaline is really pumping, I believe that he will come from the 11th nation to join the European Union. And can you elaborate on this? And my prediction is that China will form the biggest army we've ever seen and absorb North Korea, take over all of Asia, and that Japan will be broken in half by an earthquake.
All right. All right.
Okay, I can comment on that. Let me take the Antichrist first. It is when you're talking about the 11th the 11th nation which joins the European Confederation. This goes back specifically to the prophecies of Daniel in the Old Testament. And when you're talking about the prophecies of Daniel, it is my belief, and this is my personal opinion based on study, that the prophecies of Daniel, in fact, played themselves out, and the 2,300 years of Daniel's prophecy did, in fact, expire between the years 1844 and 1848. The problem with the 10-nation confederation in Europe is that there has been no 11th nation that's actually joined. There were 10 nations, and many people said, well, this is the formation of the revised Roman Empire. Then 2 nations joined simultaneously, where, in other words, there wasn't an 11th nation, there was an 11th and 12th. Now there are 16 nations that are belonging to it, and of course all Eastern Europe wants in. It is my opinion that the revised Roman Empire that is spoken of in Daniel is in fact, and the Antichrist that is spoken of in Daniel was in fact the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church coming up at a period of time where the back of the church would be broken according to the prophecies of Daniel in 1798, and this is exactly what happened when Napoleon invaded Italy. The next Antichrist, I see, is going to be a Persian. He's going to unite the Islamic Empire. He is going to, his greatest ally is going to be China. Exactly what that gentleman was saying about Japan being broken in half by an earthquake, I believe is absolutely correct. Because
is he alive now?
The Antichrist?
Yes.
He was born February 5th, 1962. That's a direct prediction that came originally from Edgar Cayce, then came through Gene Dixon in the 1950s. I believe he was born somewhere in Jerusalem.
Shawn?
Yes?
Hold the thought.
Okay.
We'll be right back to you. Back now to Shawn Morton. Shawn, are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right. A lot of people want to talk to you, Shawn.
Oh, I hope that's good.
That's good. That's good. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Good morning.
Good morning. This is Fritz from Phoenix calling.
Hi, Fritz.
How's everything?
Everything's good, thanks.
In the beginning of the program, of course, was joyful to hear his name, Billy Meyer. And you gave him a little credit there. And do you have any more scoop about Billy Meyer? It's been very quiet out of Switzerland. What's happening with him?
Well, we're right now in the process of trying to put the movie together. We've written the script, and we're talking to some very high-level people about getting it done. The last I heard of the case, his son Methuselah and I are pretty good friends, and Methuselah came out and stayed with me here last year. The contacts with Semyaze stopped in '86. Semyaze suffered an accident. She was talking to Billy, and someone tried to break into the room where Billy was speaking to her. She got up out of a chair and tripped and stumbled and cracked her head on a fireplace awning. And apparently suffered some very, very severe brain damage. She was kind of put back together, but has to now recuperate, and so she's gone back to wherever her planet is to recuperate. The contacts that Billy was having began again in the early part of 1992 with Semyaze's father, a being named Ptah, yes. Yeah. And those contacts have resulted in Billy getting, once again, a number of prophecies. I had the pleasure of running past a lot of my prophecies, a lot of my predictions, past not only Methuselah, but also Guido Musburger, who is sort of his representative now. Mm-hmm. And So he has a group in Hinterschmedrudi of about 90 people or so. He's written another book, which is Guido wrote a book called Un Fliegen Dach, which means and yet they fly. And he's working on another book called, I think, the Book of Ohm. And he's leading a very quiet life and, living with a group of people who are around him and doing his writing. And he just came out with Volume 3 of Message from the Pleiades, which Wendell Stevens has published about 5,000 copies of.
Well, thanks so much for the information. I'm sure the UFO community someday will have to give him the respect. I mean, they really dumped on him for the last 20 years, but his day will come.
Well, he's suffered a lot of blows in the UFO community here because of a disagreement that he had with MUFON many years ago. MUFON had contracts signed to represent the Billy Meyer case, or was going to sign contracts to represent Billy in the United States. Those contracts, because of rights disagreements between Billy and a number of American investigators, fell through.
All right, gentlemen, we've got to hold it there. Okay. Fritz, thanks for the call from Phoenix.
Thanks,
and
Fritz.
Shawn, hold tight. We'll be right back to you. This is Coast to Coast AM, coming to you from the high desert. I'm Art Bell.
From the Kingdom of Nye, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the CBC Radio Network. Now, once again, here's Art.
Here I am. Good morning. It is a fitting end of the week, I think. It's been that kind of week, one full of predictions and concern and worry and maybe a little paranoia and maybe, all kinds of things mixed together, and so it's a fitting way to end this week. My guest is Shawn Morton. And, Shawn, somebody just sent me a fax from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It says, "Dear Art, just for kicks, ask Shawn about Hoagland, Mars, and the moon and the pyramids."
Oh, gosh, you should probably ask Richard Hoagland that.
Well, I have, and we had him on, and he told us there are structures on the moon.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, huh? And what about the connection to the pyramids? What have you had a look at that?
I've seen NASA photographs of the various structures on the moon. I've seen digging devices on the moon. I've seen clouds of dust being raised on the moon by these X-shaped, they look like worker drones. They go up to the side of a crater, and they seem to flail away at the side of a crater and process rock. The moon's very, very interesting. I mean, I could go on about the moon for quite some time.
This is the end of Side 1. Please leave the cassette exactly where it is, flip it over, and begin again.
Let you know, in my opinion, and I suggest people grab some books on this, not only the stuff Hoagland's writing, but also Secrets of Our Spaceship Moon and Secrets of Our Starship Moon by Donald Wilson. The moon, it is my belief, is some form of artificial construct. The American Indians say that the moon was actually placed in orbit here 74,000 years ago, that it brought the yellow race, or the various Oriental races, to this planet. That the moon, what we found out through Apollo, through the seismographs on Apollo 11 and 12, is that the moon is a huge titanium yttrium sphere that seems to be covered by about 28 miles of dirt. That if you crush a ton of iron oxide, which is what the outside of the moon is made of, you get about 3/4 of a ton of oxygen, and there is in fact water on the lunar surface, not only in the soil, but what appears to be a big lake on the backside of the moon, actually water on the backside of the moon in a place called the Tsaroslavsky crater.
How could that be? How could it be? It would be frozen at best.
Well, the atmosphere on the backside of the moon is much thicker than the atmosphere on the front side of the moon for some weird reason.
Excuse me, what atmosphere?
Well, there's atmosphere on the moon. It is not, as NASA is telling us, that there is just no atmosphere. If there was no atmosphere whatsoever, then the astronauts would not, if it was a complete vacuum, the astronauts would not have been able to have left the footprints that they left. The backside of the moon has a much thicker atmosphere than the front.
Wait a minute. What? I need to understand this. Why could they not have left footprints? There is, I think, on the moon about 1/8 the gravity of Earth, and as long as you come down with some oomph, you leave a mark.
Well, the data that I've seen from the dissident scientists is that the the moon doesn't have 1/6 the gravity of the Earth. It's got almost 50% of the gravity of the Earth. That there's atmosphere on the backside of the moon. There have been photographs of clouds floating across the face of the moon. And these are NASA photos that I've seen, and you can pick up in these books, once again, Secrets of Our Starship Moon and Secrets of Our Spaceship Moon.
That I've got to see.
And Someone Else is on the Moon by George Leonard, too, and you can see the photographs of big puffy clouds floating across the backside of the moon, and get the photographs of the Saraslavsky crater where there seems to be a body of water of some kind.
Forgive me if I doubt, but I'm going to have to see this to believe it.
I was stunned when I saw a lot of the stuff myself, because so much of what we know about the moon and what's been released just doesn't seem to be what's actually going on.
All right. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hello.
Hi, Art. Hi, Shawn.
Hi, who's this?
This is Gary.
Hi, Gary.
I'm calling from the Electron Mud Flow.
How you doing?
Yeah, so Art knows what I'm going to ask.
Okay.
Of course, I live close to Mount Rainier, just northeast of Tacoma.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering, do you have any dates in mind that I should know about?
Well, I gave a trigger once again, which was the best trigger that I could find, which was Vance Davis's trigger of a 5.4 quake in the Seattle area. That if there is a substantial quake in Seattle, that the countdown will begin for Rainier of about 60 to 90 days. I am surprised that Rainier has not blown already. I know that there have been a lot of steam that's been coming out of Rainier. There have been a number of minor earthquakes, 1.5 to about 2.5, almost as high as 3s at the foot of Mount Rainier, and the fact that we were looking at more volcanic activity and more earthquake activity in the Klamath Falls area on the border of Oregon and California, I think, within the next couple of weeks. So that's your trigger. Instead of giving you a specific date, I will let you know that a blow of Rainier will be preceded by substantial earthquake activity in the area. And I think that Vulcan science is advanced enough, that volcanism is advanced enough in that area that they would be able to give some pretty major warnings to the population if Rainier was going to blow.
Okay. One last question. Can you tell anything about people specifically?
If I put myself in the state to do it, yes.
Okay.
You mean as far as personal psychic readings? I haven't done personal psychic readings for about 3 years. I just stopped doing them.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about my work, which I know Art is about.
No, I don't. We're not going to do those. Thank you very much for the call.
If you want to call the hotline, 310-217-7579, I could probably work something out for you.
Tell me something. What is life like in a Tibetan monastery? Do you sit around and what do you do? Do you meditate all the time?
Well, it's a lot of work, actually. I mean, remember, when I got there, I was very much a novice, so it was me sweeping the floors and doing the laundry, and I mean, it was a great deal of work. There were, of course, classes every day. Meditation was very, very strict. There were very specific things that we needed to learn about. The monastery was actually pretty well funded by Tangbach, which was the city, the little town at the bottom of the hill. The monks themselves have a magnificent sense of humor. It was actually kind of a scary situation too, because there were a lot of I guess what you would call Tibetan warriors that were using that valley to actually smuggle arms into Tibet. I've never actually been to Tibet. I was in Nepal. I was right on the border. But the monks themselves have a wonderful sense of humor. There's a sign over the monastery that says 10,000 monks, 10,000 religions, where it has a lot to do with your own personal development through a very, very rigid aspect of meditation, learning things like astral travel, learning about not only past lives but future lives, understanding how the planet itself works. But it's rigorous, but it was one of the most amazing times of my life, one of the most frightening and yet one of the most enlightening.
While we're on the subject, there was a 2020 story on reincarnation, which, doggone it, I missed. I don't know if you happen to catch it or not. Are you a believer in reincarnation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Why? Why do you believe that? I mean, what brought you to that faith? Why?
Because I've had too much direct experience with my own energy, with understanding where the energy comes from. I believe that reincarnation exists because energy is never killed, that energy does not in fact die. I believe that we incarnate as groups on this planet to learn with each other, to constantly work out different aspects and different phases of existence until we become perfected souls and spirits that then allow us to move on to bigger and better things, greater planes.
Yeah, that's about the traditional belief, all right. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hello.
Good morning, Art. It is a great pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Thank you.
I have just a few points and a prediction I'd like to make for Mr. Morton. This is Craig calling from Phoenix on KFYI.
Hi, Craig.
Mr. Morton, let me start with...
Call us toll-free at 1-800-618-8255.
Because
First-time callers, area 702-727-1222.
You going to confirm or deny that?
No, that's confirmed. I know that.
Correct.
Call the wild card lines, area 702-727-1295. All right. Well, there's no point in going on with that one, I suppose. He'll just keep saying that and saying it. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hello.
Art, Bill from Phoenix.
Hello, Bill.
How are you?
Fine.
Mr. Morton.
Hi, Bill.
Ahimsa.
Is it Bill?
Yeah.
Hi, Bill.
Ahimsa, brother.
Ahimsa.
I want to know, why can we not focus enough positive karma on what's going on in the world so that we can have some effect? It appears that we've already done some good in Korea. And by the way, you want to tell Art anything about the government's involvement in the karma positive feed program?
Do you know what he's talking about, Shawn?
No. Maybe you can clarify that, Bill. The positive feed program?
Right. The positive thought process where we...
Well, let me jump up on my soapbox for a second. You're absolutely 100% right, and I think that Art is doing probably one of the greatest services of anyone I've ever seen in having information like this placed out. I really can't get on the establishment media because every time I send my predictions to the newspapers or to the TV stations, I've been on TV 3 times on Channel 9.
Well, we're hamstrung in this country by old-fashioned paradigms. You realize that?
Well, but it's also because of the fact that I've got this girl who runs the news desk at Channel 9, and I send her stuff all the time, and I say, look, this is when it's going to happen. She says, look, I can't get you on the air because the lady who edits me is scared to death of this type of thing, and they feel that they have a responsibility to not panic the public. My attitude is that the more we start talking about this, the more we start talking about not only the predictions, and let me boil down to what's really important. If you want to know what's really important, we got a lot of trouble in this country, and the trouble is coming from the fact that people are simply losing their spirituality. They're losing an understanding of the natural laws of the universe, whether or not it's Buddhism or Christianity or Judaism or Baha'i or Sufi or what have you. We have to get back to a more spiritual aspect of living in this country, or this country will be destroyed.
I happen to agree with that. Shawn.
And art provides the greatest service. You people should be calling Art every day, thanking Art for getting on the air and having the guts to be able to stand up and say a lot of the things he does and have some of the guests that he has on, because it is people like this man that are going to be responsible for changing the nature of this country, for getting us back to a truly constitutional form of government, which will lead, I believe, once the natural catastrophes begin to break up the United States into a 13 independent country system. Once the federal government goes south or goes bankrupt and the states begin to take responsibility for themselves, but it has to start from within. It has to start from the heart and from the soul and from the sword that is about to be forged in each and every single one of us that is going to be used to fight to get back our freedoms, back our personal responsibility. But how many people want that?
Actually, Shawn, there are a number of movements already underway to recoup sovereignty for states. Colorado, I believe Florida, Hawaii, certainly. You mentioned them earlier. You see kind of a split coming, don't you?
Those movements will be responsible for the salvation of this country. Those movements are going to be responsible for giving power back to the individual, giving power back to the people involved. And as I said, once the natural catastrophes begin to occur, and everything I'm talking about between now and about 1996 or so is filler for much larger, much more substantial earthquakes to occur, starting up in Seattle, going along the western coast of the United States. Mount Rainier goes, Mount Pelee goes in Martinique, which is going to cause a lot of ruptures in Florida and the underbelly of the United States. But specifically, because of the natural catastrophes, many of these catastrophes are going to completely derail, in some cases, the plans of, I guess, what you would call the New World Order, these governments who want things to go exactly the way they're going because people are enslaved and they don't know it. And those are the best slaves you can have. People that have no clue that they are in fact enslaved just keep going right along with the program, and life gets more unbearable every day. And every single day, more of your freedoms get eaten up more and more gradually.
But if it happens slowly enough, Shawn, like a television slowly going bad, you don't notice it.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Hold on. We'll be right back to you. Shawn Morton is my guest. All right. Now, back to Shawn Morton. Hi, Shawn.
Hi.
All right. Back to the telephones. A lot of people hanging in to talk to you.
Okay.
First-time caller line. You're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Yes, Mr. Morton, Spokane, Washington, KSBN.
Hi. Who's this?
Al?
Hi, Al.
Yes, sir. Spokane, I got three things for you. Spokane, do you see anything in Spokane in reference to the earthquake or the volcano Mount Rainier?
If Mount Rainier blows, there will be no real part of Washington that will be unaffected. And as I said, most of what will occur, the weak side of Mount Rainier faces Seattle.
Yeah.
Which means that if the people do their job and if sections of Seattle are going to be evacuated, they're obviously going to be evacuated south into the southern part of Washington. The primary thing of the eruption of Rainier is going to be the fact that Rainier is so large, the fact that it has such a large mantle to it, and as I've stated, it has the potentiality because of the pluton that is building up underneath Rainier to actually dump enough volcanic ash, which is very reflective of the sun's rays, into the Earth's atmosphere, which will then be carried on the various streams down to the lower part of the United States to drop the mean North American temperature by about 3 degrees, which will lead to very, very big, massive storms, worse winters than we've had before, and the possibility of substantial food shortages in the rest of the United States.
Okay, the reason I asked, sir, is Spokane has got a lot of volcanic old rock around it, you know.
Yes.
And my geology teacher at Eastern Washington University said that Spokane is not earthquake prone, you know, but I tend to disagree because how can they tell, you know, so deep under the earth, you know?
Well, it's not earthquake. What I was saying early in the program is the fact that the quakes that Klamath Falls and those areas are having, those aren't real earthquakes. Those are expansions and contractions of the magma flues that run from Rainier down to Mount St. Helens, down to Hood, Lassen, Mount Shasta, and then go all the way down the center part of California, ending up, well, then they go down into Mammoth, and then those go all the way down into Mexico, specifically Mount Popocatépetl in Mexico, all the way in southern Mexico.
Well, you know, Idaho had an earthquake last week, you know, 5.5.
Where was this?
It was in Idaho, right next door to Spokane.
Yeah.
And it never was on the air, and I don't think Art Bell knew about that one.
No, I did not.
Yes, it was on the news up here in the Pacific Northwest, you know, and it shook up most of the northwestern.
No, you're right. Wait a minute, caller. No, I did hear about it. It was a little more than a week ago, though.
Yes, about a week ago. But see, they don't say too much on the national media about these things.
Well, I should have. I get the U.S. Geological Survey reports every week. Let me. If that in fact happened, then you've got. Oh boy.
David Copperfield. Do you know anything about this man that flies with people outside of the studio? Now, I know he's a magician, but do you think he might have an affiliation with the alien intelligence? I'm serious.
All right, caller, thank you. Well, all right.
I have no idea, Al. I don't know. He's
You don't think David Copperfield's tied in with the aliens?
I have no idea.
I think he'd probably appreciate the consideration anyway. Hello there on the toll-free line. You're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hello.
Yeah, good morning. This is Paul in Fort Bragg.
Hi, Paul.
How y'all doing?
Good, thanks.
I was, this is just something really curious happened. You were saying something about your fear about Clinton being assassinated or something along that line.
Yes.
And when he was over in Normandy, it was really strange. I had two dreams one night, and they were both the same dream, and it was basically me seeing a headline, Clinton dead.
I'm telling you, I was having that same dream. I don't know if we're hooked together, but I was telling everybody that he was really in danger in Europe. I was surprised. I mean, my prediction is going towards about the end of July or so, but I was surprised something didn't happen to him in Europe. And that's why we went to the Secret Service and sent the registered letters and said, you know, we fear for his life. You know, he is the President of the United States. He should be prayed for guidance and wisdom.
Oh, for sure, yes.
I don't want anything to happen to the guy.
Yeah,
I don't agree with him. I don't particularly like him, but I certainly don't think anybody should do anything.
Well, I would say this: if prayers would impart wisdom, not enough obviously have been praying.
No doubt. Well, thanks a lot. That's all I wanted to say.
All right,
okay,
caller,
thanks,
thank
Paul.
you. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Good morning.
Hi, Art. This is Matt from Portland.
Hi, Matt.
Hi, Shawn. First of all, I sent you a fax, Art, about the number of the beast.
Six,
you know that?
About the triple sixes?
Six, yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
In it, I wrote to you that my brother and I had the same dream on the same night about the assassination of Clinton.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of spooky.
There seems to be a lot of that going around.
Yeah. Anyway, Shawn, my question to you is, you were on the Montel Williams show.
On the 27th of December, yeah.
Right, and he said he was going to go up with you to Area 51.
He swore to
Whatever
God,
happened with
he
that?
swore in front of a national audience that he would go with me to Area 51. He said, Shawn, it's my 500th episode of the Montel Williams show. I swear that I will go out to Area 51 with you. This is my bodyguard, Big Joe. We're going to go with you.
Right.
We tried to put the trip together 3 times. He canceled all 3 times. The last time was the 5th of May. I put off a talk I was doing in Las Vegas. I was walking out the door with my airplane ticket in my hand, and his producer called and said, look, this has never happened before, but Montel has called. He's canceled. I didn't even get the call from him. This is what the producer was saying. It came from his assistant, and I said, I don't know, Alex. It sounds to me like he's being got to. And he says, all I can tell you is just I've never seen this happen before.
Was it Montel that was going to go storming into Area 51, was threatening to do that?
Well, not storming in. I mean, we were going to take him on top of the hill maybe and show him the base. I mean, if he wanted to go up to the gate, I was sure going to let him.
So you're saying he wimped out?
Yeah. I don't know why, but he just basically he swore on the show that he'd go to 51, and we had a follow-up episode planned where the first part was going to be Area 51, and the second part was going to be about alien abductions and the whole thing, and poof, they just canceled.
There you go,
Colin. Excuse as to why, though, huh?
Well, I can tell you that the Montel Williams show may or may not be on the air next year. Montel has a production company. He's working on a 1-hour drama series starring himself called The Education of Mr. Waters. He really doesn't want to do the talk show thing anymore. He wants to get into acting, and he was supposedly shooting this pilot, or he had some conflict of interest with a shooting schedule or something. That's how it was told to me.
All right. Well, that's not a very good reason not to do what he promised.
Correct. Well, who knows? Maybe we'll go next year. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. All right, a quick call. First-time caller line on the air with Shawn Morton in about a minute. Hello there.
Oh, yes. I was calling to get the fax number. I have never... You shocked me. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm wanting to know if this program is going to be available through this... Is it CBC Broadcast Network like they had the Paul Hoagland show?
Richard Hoagland. Yes, it will be. I'll give a number.
Okay, and what is the fax number there?
It's area code 702-727-8499.
Okay, I was just calling on that. I have just started listening from Phoenix, Arizona, KFYI,
right.
And it's in the middle of the night, and I wake up and I catch parts of it, and I just say, yay, Art Bell.
Me too. Yay, Art Bell.
Please, everybody. All right. That's very kind of you, ma'am. Go ahead and fax me whatever you wish.
Okay, thanks.
Right. All right. We're going to have to pause here at the top of the hour for the news. Shawn Morton is my guest. I warn you, if this kind of thing disturbs you, before it's too late for you, turn the radio off. For the rest of you, we'll be right back.
From the Kingdom of Nye, you're hearing Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Much more than just a talk show. To participate in the program, call toll-free 1-800-618-8255. That's 1-800-618-8255. This is the CBC Radio Network.
My guest is Shawn Morton. I sense a lot of you will want copies of this program, and I would ask, be gentle with our answering service, please. They get swamped. You can order a copy of this program by dialing area code 503-664-7966. Let me repeat that number. It's good 24 hours a day. Area code 503-664-7966. And in view of where it is, up in Oregon, I guess you would want to hurry and get your copy before that portion of Oregon sinks, or whatever it is destined to do. Back now to Shawn Morton. And, Shawn, once again, you're on the air. Hello. I thought you were on the air. Shawn, are you there?
Here I am. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine.
Okay, good. Let me, once again, to any of the listeners that want to get my book, The Millennium Factor, Prophecy for the Next 30 Years, or The Gulf Breeze Prophecies, which I co-wrote with Vance Davis, they're more than welcome to call, or a subscription to my newsletter, the Delphi Associates, the newsletter you have to have today because it tells you all about tomorrow. Please feel free to call 310-217-7579. That's 310-217-7579.
All right.
And they can get details about the newsletter and about the how to order the book.
Shawn, there are a lot of people worried about this country and about where it's going and about civil unrest and all the rest of it. Somebody faxes the following. Do you think there will be martial law in America this summer?
Not this summer, but I think you will see, it is my prediction that you will see martial law in 7 major cities by late 1995. And I think that this will be because of a combination of natural catastrophes, steps taken by the government, and basically economic upheavals. Primarily, as many other people think, and I don't think it takes psychic powers to predict this, I think that the federal government is actually going to go bankrupt by late 95 to mid-early 1996.
Well, there are a lot of economists who would agree with you.
But I don't think they take it a step further. I think what you're going to see is that in Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, Miami, Washington, D.C., and New York, and those 7 major cities, you're going to see the Constitution suspended for a period of time, 90 to maybe 120 days. You're going to see sweeps for guns throughout most of the cities. You're going to see gangs actually working in concert with, as shock troops, I guess you might say, working with, well, I can't even call them federal authorities because I think that a lot of them will actually be like Hessians, like foreign mercenaries. But it's just going to be in the major cities, and a lot of this is going to have to do with the breakup of the federal union. And my long-range prediction for this is that by the year 2005, I see no longer the United States of America. I see something called the NAU, which is the North American Union, which consists of what is left of Mexico and Canada, and then 11 other nation-states or independent republics that are comprised of a number of city-states within the United States. We're no longer using the Stars and Stripes as a symbol of federal authority, but in fact we have what's called the Gaston flag, which is a large yellow flag with a snake-coiled serpent on it, which says, "Don't tread on me" on the bottom. And it is my belief that this flag will be adopted officially at that time, and that the capital by 2005 of the United States and eventually of much of the world will be Omaha, Nebraska, specifically a place that will be called New Omaha, with a new economic system that will be based more on food, commodities, and hard metals rather than stocks and bonds.
Wow. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Morton, you're a biblical scholar, sir?
Yes.
You mentioned earlier about the Pleiadian contact name of, I'm going to mispronounce this, I'm sorry, Art,
Semyaze.
Okay, are you familiar with the uncanonized Book of Enoch, sir?
I am, and it's actually very interesting because I know exactly what you're going to say. I knew it before you even started.
Semyaze was the leader of the fallen angels.
She was the leader of the fallen angels. You're exactly right.
And
if you look in,
one at a time, please.
Sorry. If you look in the Book of Enoch, it's in chapter 69 of the Book of Enoch, and Semyaze was in fact the leader of the fallen angels. You're absolutely correct.
Who by that uncanonized book, sir, was sealed up. Now I'm not a religious rightist, okay? This is a book that's uncanonized, but according to this treatise, was sealed up in the desert until the end times, and this angel was the angel who led the original revolt of the angels, if you will, and the angels coupling with man, the begetting of the giants, the fields, and the phylum.
He was the leader of the sons, the fallen sons of God. You're exactly right.
Correct. Okay. Now, do you see what I'm getting at here? I mean, the names are so close that it's somewhat scary. You know, and I'm wondering where, you know, all these names, and I see these names, and I read these publications, and they're 1, 2, 3, 4 letters off of the classic demon names. You know, and as I said, I'm not a religious man. I'm a Buddhist. But you know, Pat Robertson and these other folks are claiming it's a demonic situation.
All right, good. Hold it there. A demonic situation. Shawn, some people would say that what you're saying and the source of what you're saying is demonic. What do you say to them?
I have no response. I'm going to say that it's not. I'm.
How do you know?
Well, my aspect. I mean, having studied demonology. I mean, when you're talking about aspects of demonology, you're talking about someone or something that has the detriment of the evolution of mankind involved, who attacks the spirit and attacks the soul. My whole gist of my teachings is to get people to return to the original laws of the Old Testament, the first 5 books of the Old Testament.
Nevertheless, with a lot of what you're saying 100 years ago, we'd have been building a fire under you.
This is true. This is true, because I also believe in reincarnation, and I also believe in certain spiritual concepts which are still found in the Great Pyramid, which are still found in the original text. And I believe that much of modern Christianity was corrupted by the Roman Catholic Church when many of the New Testament scriptures were rewritten, when anybody who disagreed with the church was killed for many thousands of years. Well, for the last 2,000-year epic, we've been under a lot of imprisonment by a lot of theology that simply just doesn't work because it's not in tune with the first 5 books of the Old Testament and the original initial Mosaic Code. And I know exactly what that gentleman's saying, and I asked the exact same questions when I got interested in the Billy Meyer case to begin with. I was the first one to notice that Semyaze was the leader of the fallen angels in the Book of Enoch, and it made me very suspicious of everything that was going on, made me certainly want to double-check what's happening. And I'm not saying that Billy Meyer knows everything. I'm not saying the Pleiadians know everything. My biggest beef with that entire case is the fact that the Pleiadians state they won't help us. They give Billy Meyer future information, and he locks it up at a vault in Switzerland, and then every time one of his predictions come through, he marches it out saying, look, I locked it up on the vault on this day, see, I'm right, but I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen. And the Pleiadians have basically said, look, you guys are on your own. We won't, if this world gets destroyed, we're not going to lift a finger to help you one way or the other. So, tough. You've made your bed, now you're going to have to lie in it.
All right. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Hi, good morning, Art. Good morning, Shawn.
Hi, who's this?
This is Mike in Seattle, KBI.
Hi, Mike.
Yes, Mike.
I talked to you on Laura Lee once. Remember I told you I had these dreams about these galactic wars?
Yeah, that was great.
And you told me to write you a letter, and I just haven't gotten around to it
Well,
yet.
please get around to it.
You're still at the Hermosa Beach address,
yeah,
right?
2207 Hermosa Avenue, HERMOSA, Hermosa Beach, California, 90254. If anybody wants to write. And also, you can call the 217-275-7379 number.
A couple of things, quick things I wanted to ask you about also. It seemed like this past year I've been thinking a lot. You know how they're coming out saying, well, you should go ahead and get your guns now because the government's trying to take away, and
yes,
they're talking about all this civil unrest.
Yes.
And the more I think about it, and I've had dreams related to this, I have a feeling that you're not going. If you try to win these wars physically, you're not. You're gonna. They're just going to beat you, and you're going to lose. I think the only way the good or the positive forces are going to win is to do it psychically.
Well. Wow, you've hit on a really excellent point, because that's going to be a lot of what the future is going to be about. I would also say that it is our job to constantly work for the enlightenment of all sentient beings, and I take that vow very, very seriously. It is also, the future has a lot to do with working for your own enlightened self-interest, but also a dog with no teeth is going to get kicked all day. So my suggestion is a well-armed populace is a populace that is, can I say, not exactly a wise populace, but the best defense against anybody, any tyrants, any individual that's going to take away your rights.
Sure, an armed populace. Shawn, what is going to happen? Where is gun control going? What do we have to look forward to?
I think once again you're going to see gun control in the major cities. You're going to see most of the civil unrest and the civil wars are going to be coming from those 7 cities that I was talking about. There is no way...
Yeah, this has troubled me, though, Shawn. How do you control guns from a central source, the federal government, in the big cities without applying an equal amount of control in the country?
Well, it's because cities are easy to choke off. Cities can't grow their own food. They rarely have access to their own water. You don't really have to go from hill to hill and town to town to be able to take them over.
True.
Los Angeles, all you'd have to do is basically just choke off the Mulholland Aqueduct, and the whole city would die of thirst in about 2 weeks. Specifically, Las Vegas is also, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Phoenix, and Albuquerque are primarily artificial environments. If the air conditioning went out in Phoenix for a couple of days, you'd have people dropping dead.
Ditto here, sure.
Yeah, and in Las Vegas as well. They're artificial environments which are very, very easily controlled, where you can control the entire population. I mean, if you don't have food to eat and you don't have water, a gun's not going to do you any good, unless you're going to take somebody on with it. Everybody talks about the fact that the entire United States is going to be under martial law for an extended period of time, and it's going to be like 1984, and I'm telling you, it's impossible. It's just not going to happen. We've got 75 million guns here.
All right, Shawn, hold that point. Let me do a little bit of business. We'll come right back to you. Shawn Morton is my guest, and as I said earlier, I do sense we have your attention. Once again, Shawn Morton. Shawn, are you there?
Yes, I am, Mark.
Good. Well, this is quite a program. I guess I ought to caution people. You're going to scare some people with all of this, Shawn. What do you say to them? Are these things that you're saying will absolutely happen, or might happen, or can be avoided, or what?
Well, let me put it to you this way: when you study the prophecies and the predictions of the Great Pyramid,
yes,
the Great Pyramid of Giza talks about us entering into, I guess, what we would call the next phase of humanity's evolution, what they call the Messianic Initiative phase of man's evolution. It talks about an event that occurred November 30th, 1985, and the Great Pyramid, through the sacred geometry in it, states that, and I'm quoting now, powerful spiritual influences will begin to irradiate the enlightened, bringing them closer to spiritual and material perfection. Now, from 1985 to 1999, and it specifically points to February 21st of 1999, it says that the spiritual communities, or communes of people coming out of the cities, beginning to live back in the land, back in harmony with the earth, back in spirit with God and with each other, that the spiritual communities must be established, and that the final establishment of the kingdom of the spirit begins in February of 1999. In between, from 1985 and 1999, and the pyramid, through most of it, is actually rather chatty, where it talks about the sacred geology or the sacred mathematics talk about different events occurring in this phase and that phase and whatever. There's a blank slate. And that blank slate points to the fact that from 1985, when these influences begin to occur, to 1999, where we start going back to the personal responsibility, back to living in tune with the planet, back to living in tune with each other, it's basically stating that you can do this the hard way, or you can do this the easy way. You can do it the hard way by going through war, civil unrest, natural catastrophes, rioting, massive geological changes, which will spur many out of the cities or into now obeying the laws which they should have been obeying in the first place. Or you can do this the easy way. The easy way is primarily through one respect for others, starting with a strong, powerful family unit, loving your wife, loving your children, and then from there, realizing that you're sovereign in your home and king of your castle, so to speak.
All right, based on current trends, Shawn, how are we doing?
Not very well. Based on current trends, what we're looking at is we are currently looking at the political breakup and collapse of the United States by late 1995 to early 1996. We are looking at massive natural catastrophes, specifically earthquakes, that will occur beginning in Washington and then begin to fracture the state of California all the way down so that California by 1997 loses anywhere from 10 to about 35 to 40 miles of coastline. You're seeing, and I have a map in my book, The Millennium Factor, of what I think happened. You're seeing a substantial quake on the New Madrid Fault, which will begin to open the Mississippi River at its mouth. You're seeing snow that will begin to melt in the Canadian areas, which will then begin to feed into the Great Lakes, and the Great Lakes will begin to become one large inland sea, with the Mississippi River actually becoming much larger, joining up with the Missouri and a number of other rivers, and then widening to anywhere between 15 miles wide to, as I said, about 100 miles at its mouth.
Other than those changes, the future looks bright, though.
Well, it's, you know, the pyramid points to, once again, by the year 2025, that there will be small groups of people, 15 to maybe 20% or so, that will begin to evolve, that will come together in these spiritual communities, that will begin to truly live in tune with themselves and with the land. And
while you're on that
the rest of
topic,
humanity goes to hell in a handbasket.
right? While you're on that topic, Richard Hoagland is going to have a meeting with the Hopis.
Yes.
And it's a very curious thing he's doing, and I wonder what he's on about.
Well, Richard's primary aspect in meeting with the Hopis, I'm just theorizing now because I haven't really talked to him, but it's believed that the Hopis actually came from Mars originally, that they were, that when they talk about the upper, or what they call the lower world, that they in fact lived on Mars, and that their legends specifically point to them living on a planet that was of a red rock, where they ran out of water, where they had to melt the polar ice caps and create large canals.
Right.
And if you look at their pottery is interesting and unusual because the pottery is actually all exact base reliefs of the surface of Mars.
What I guess I'm saying is, though, that aspect of the investigation aside, is it not likely that they would talk to Richard Hoagland about exactly the kind of spiritual revival and return to Earth that you're talking about?
They would, because I know Grandfather Thomas Binyaka very well. I was just on the Vicki Lawrence show with him. I had the pleasure of introducing him at the Whole Life Expo. And we're entering into the phase of what is called Koanascatsi, the age of chaos. And right now, we're at the crux point of the Hopi prophecies, where they say, if we keep living like men without heads, as they say, losing our minds, that we will destroy the planet and the great shakings will begin to destroy pretty much everything. And they say that we've already gone through the First and Second World War and the gourd of ashes, which would burn the Earth, which is the atomic bomb.
All right, we're at the bottom of the hour, so hold that thought. We'll be right back. Otherwise, it's going to be a great future, everybody. This is Coast to Coast AM.
Call Art Bell. In the Kingdom of Nye, toll free at 1-800-618-8255. 1-800-618-TALK. First time callers 702-727-1222. 702-727-1222. Or use the wildcard line at 702-727-1295. This is Coast to Coast AM on the CBC Radio Network.
Shawn Morton is my guest. Hi, everybody. I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast AM. And yes, this is some heavy stuff. Prediction, prophecy, and I don't know what to say. Just keep listening. If you're so inclined, if it scares you, turn it off. Here is Shawn, if you're there, here's a fax. Hello, Art. Would you please ask your guest the following question? Did Lee Harvey Oswald kill Kennedy?
No. Actually, can I expand on that just a bit?
Absolutely.
My mother's maiden name is Kennedy, and she was actually second cousins to Joseph Kennedy, and it's kind of interesting if you know the family background of the feud that went on between CIA and the Kennedy family for so many years. Joe Kennedy made the majority of his money off of booze and guns, whereas most of the very, very moneyed families like the Roosevelts, the Delanos, the Walkers, the Bushes, many of the Rothschilds in the 20th century, the Rockefellers, made primarily most of their money off of drugs. And these drugs came specifically, they were primarily opium and heroin, which is how the British monarchy made a great deal of its money by smuggling heroin and opium into China around the turn of the century, which is why Hong Kong was originally set up as part of the opium trade and the opium wars with China. In the 1930s, Joseph Kennedy was vehemently opposed to the United States getting involved in World War II. He led the biggest peace rally in modern times with Charles Lindbergh, 89,000 people at the Los Angeles Coliseum in 1939, all people who did not believe that we should get involved in the war in Europe. Of course, FDR felt completely differently, and at that time, Joe Kennedy was ambassador to the Court of St. James. He was the American ambassador to England, and FDR desperately wanted to get the United States involved in the war, and he set up the OSS, the Office of Special Services, under Wild Bill Donovan, specifically to bait the Germans into attacking America or American interests so that the U.S. would have some reason to get involved with the war in Germany. Joe Kennedy did everything he could to try to sabotage that effort. He was relieved of his post after the United States did, in fact, get involved. Mussolini had managed to entirely kick the Mafia out of Italy during that time. OSS went in and set the Mafia up again to act as a resistance force against Mussolini. Then John Kennedy comes along, and he runs the House Investigative Committee on Organized Crime in the 1950s, once again with the Mafia, et cetera, et cetera. So this feud between, and the OSS then after the war became the Central Intelligence Agency. So the feud between the Kennedy family and the big moneyed interest that later became, basically the CIA became the watchdog or the guardian for, they go back many, many, many years. And this had most of it had to do with the fact that Kennedy hated OSS, his father hated the OSS, he hated CIA, and when he got suckered into the whole Bay of Pigs thing, CIA and the Mafia, who had been friends since the war, decided he had to go. And I think...
so it was the CIA and the Mafia?
Primarily, but you can see the connections between the two of them as to why they wanted to get rid of him.
This is the end of side one. Please leave the cassette exactly where it is, flip it over, and begin again.
From Stephen.
Well, it was just a patsy, actually.
All right. From Stephen in San Diego, Mr. Morton began speaking about something he called the bearded star, Shoemaker Levy 9, and how this prediction related to present-day events in Korea. He was sidetracked before he completed the thought and never got back to it. Please ask him to continue.
Okay. Myself and Robert Egan, who is a very serious Nostradamus scholar, I jokingly call him Nostrababus, affectionately. We basically have been able to unleash a large number of quatrains in the Nostradamus material that up until now haven't made any sense because nobody knew what the bearded star was. Everybody just assumed it was a comet, but when Nostradamus talks about a comet, he specifically says a comet, not a bearded star. Shoemaker Levy 9 was discovered a year and a half ago, and it was just Shoemaker Levy, and then it began to break up into pieces. It was Shoemaker Levy 2 and then 9 and is now actually Shoemaker Levy 24 because it's so many different pieces. Nostradamus specifically states that when the bearded star makes its run, that certain things will occur. One prophecy has already happened. The Nostradamus prophesied that the great star, all of this has already just happened. We have the great star burning for 7 days. Is obviously a little bit of nuclear oomph in order to start a chain reaction, which could actually turn it into a second sun. It's going to burn for 7 days because Shoemaker Levy is going to strike from July 18th to July 25th actually the 24th over a 7-day period. The great cloud making the sun appear double, well, Jupiter is a huge cloud of hydrogen gas. It's going to ignite, making the sun appear double. And at the same time, 6 weeks ago, the Pope fell down in his bathtub. Now, he smashed his hip and then slipped down into the bathtub and actually broke his femur. So he actually broke his hip and his femur.
Right.
It happened in the evening when it's called the large mastiff, the Pope has always been compared in the Roman press to being a big dog, to being like a hunting dog. His demeanor, his determination, his dogged determination.
Yes.
Him howling all night had to do with the fact that his injuries happened in the evening. They couldn't move him. He was allergic to certain drugs. They had problems setting his hip. He basically just screamed for about 24 hours. And he had to then change his abode because they had to take him out to the country to convalesce. So that's one of the prophecies that's come true. Also, in the time of the bearded star, it specifically talks about a monarch being killed that will come from a country whose treasury has been emptied by land and sea, that it will have something to do with a list of a list of cities that this monarch would then visit, and the list of cities that Nostradamus gives are the exact cities that Clinton went to in order, basically gives his travel itinerary, and then the last line talks about Turin interdicte, and the specific line basically talks about an interdict from Rome, which the Pope issued while Clinton was there as a slap in the face to Clinton, primarily saying what an interdict is it's a gag order, and that the Pope basically states that this particular topic can no longer be discussed, and that if you do, you will be excommunicated. And that was abortion, women being priests, and birth control. All three things that were very popular at Clinton. And for the first time in 36 years, Rome basically put the entire Catholic world under a gag order saying these things are not to be discussed anymore. So basically, during the run of the star, it would point to this monarch from the country whose treasury's been emptied by land and sea, the United States. The treasury's been emptied by earthquakes. It's been emptied by natural water catastrophes. He just visited Rome. They've just issued an interdict. The word Turin means the Shroud of Turin. It basically means a holy relic, which is what Nostradamus was sort of jokingly referring to the Pope as. But it also refers to the death of the Pope in another quatrain, that when the bearded star turns to the north, that the Pope will die between the bed and the sill, before the early morning hours. Now, this points directly to the bearded star, which is Shoemaker Levy. On the 22nd of June, the bearded star will hook to the north, just as it's about to come back into the orbit of Jupiter. And as it does this, Nostradamus relates Jupiter, which is like the Pope of the planets, to the Pope of the Christian world. Now, the death of a Pope doesn't seem like a big thing to us today, but if you're living in the 15th century and something happens to the head of all Christendom, it's a big thing.
You bet.
So this sets off a chain reaction. The death of this Pope will set off a chain reaction where the next Pope, I believe, well, he will be called Gloria Olivas, which means the glory of the glorious olive branch. I believe it will be a man named Basil Hume, who is a Benedictine, and he will be called Leo XIV. This Pope will reign over a great rebirth of the Catholic Church for a brief period of time. And then I am seeing the next Pope shot in Belgrade, Yugoslavia, having something to do with bringing peace between Bosnia and Serbia. After he is killed, the last of the popes, and this is going to be the last Pope that will rule over the Catholic Church, will be called Peter the Roman. It begins with Peter, it ends with Peter. This comes from the Nostradamus prophecies and also from the prophecies of the great Irish prophet Malachi. This black priest, or this black Pope, will be lame somehow, like a club foot with like a hunchback. He'll be called the lame priest, or the black prince, or the black Pope, and it will be this Pope who will collaborate with the Persian Antichrist, because by that time the Catholic Church will be so broke due to everything from lawsuits to archdioceses going bankrupt to the natural catastrophes, that he will cooperate with this Persian Antichrist, who will then basically give him, the Persian Antichrist will give him money in exchange for legitimacy, and the Persian Antichrist will then have access to all of the various texts underneath the Vatican, black magic texts on Satanism. I mean, all the things that he's going to use to magically begin to weave his spell to start trying to take over the entire known world. And this begins, and I can guarantee you that the Black Pope is going to be in power by late 1996 for all of this to fall into line.
All right, let me bring another caller on. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, who's this?
I'm calling from KOH.
What's your name?
Kay.
Hi, Kay.
I have a question to ask you. Do you believe that, according to the biblical scriptures in the Bible, that when it's all, when after all the Battle of Armageddon, that Jesus Christ will set up his theocracy on earth and reign 1,000 years?
In other words, will it happen as the Bible says?
Well, you have to. I have to ask you to go back and take a look at the Book of Revelation, because I want you to realize that the four-squared city of Jerusalem, which descends from the sky, which then sets up the kingdom of Christ as it's stated in the Book of Revelation, quite specifically doesn't happen until almost 1,000 years after these events. There's a 1,000-year period before the true millennium. You got to read the scriptures, because it talks about we're entering a premillennial period now in which there will be a 500-year period of what is called the Messianic Initiative. Then there'll be 500 years we'll be able to sort of live things on our own where we won't have spiritual leaders. We'll know how to do it ourselves. And it's not until we're at the end of the premillennial period, which is still another 1,000 years, that the four-squared city of Jerusalem actually lands and we become part of the Galactic Federation.
Galactic Federation.
Well, that's what I call it.
All right, fine. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Hi, Shawn. This is Carol, and I'm in Phoenix, KFYI.
Hi, Carol.
Hi.
Hi.
Just a real quick thing. That earthquake they had in Idaho was on the 7th, and it was a 5.0.
Okay.
Secondly, I don't know, most people aren't even aware of this, but, Krakatoa has been erupting again. Actually, it's the new island that was formed after Krakatoa, when it's actually now called Krakatoa or Child of Krakatoa.
Right. There was there was just a 7.4 quake. Once again, it's very hard again because they've thrown out the Richter scale. So
yeah, I know.
Everything is like almost a full point lower than the old Richter scale was. The surface wave sensor put the quake at a 7.2, which created a tidal wave, which killed, I think, about 150 people on the island near Java. Yes, Krakatoa is active again. Mount Tall is very active. These volcanoes are important because they're linchpin points of certain prophecies. For example, when Mount Vesuvius blows in Rome, that is the opening chime for many of the major wars that are going to happen in Europe. When Mount Pelée blows in Martinique, which is south of Cuba, that is a direct warning to the people in Florida that when that volcano begins to go, that within a year or so, it is going to create massive tidal activity that is going to begin to inundate the soft underbelly of the United States and the Gulf of Mexico, and also begin to flood large sections of Florida. So these volcanoes are very, very important because they act as warnings in the chain of the events that I see coming.
Right. Also, speaking of the things over in Italy, they've been also having earthquakes in the Straits of Gibraltar on a regular basis in the last couple of weeks, and that's at the opening of the Mediterranean Sea over there. So that puts it right in that area. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, you were talking about Billy Meyer has done another book, the third book of the Messages.
Yes.
Is that going to be available through Wendell Stevens' UFO Archive?
I presume. Wendell prints the books himself, and he only makes about 5,000 copies of them or so. But book 3 is out, and it's fascinating. He really saved a lot of the good stuff for the end, and he talks all about Atlantis and Lemuria and an exact timeline of Earth's history, and it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Oh, because we have followed the thing with Billy Meyer since 1980, and I mean, the whole thing is just totally fascinating, and, they've had a real hard time trying to debunk any of his stuff, even, under scientific evaluation.
Oh, there's so much proof. There's metal samples, there's scientists, there's all kinds of stuff. And plus, like I said, we're in the process of putting the movie together now with 2 of the biggest producers in Hollywood. So
any idea when that might be coming out?
We'll know whether or not the script gets accepted probably within the next 2 weeks.
All right, good. Hold on just a moment, Shawn. We'll be right back to you. Shawn Morton is my guest. And some of this is pretty shocking stuff, so use your own judgment at this time of the morning why you ought to be able to handle it. You all have run me out of fax paper. So I'm going to go in at the hour break and change the fax paper or put new paper in the fax machine. In the meantime, everybody, just hold on. All right, Shawn, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, back we go. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Morton, hi.
Yeah, so I want to talk to Morton.
He's listening.
Yeah, great.
Who's this?
This is the Hound Dog from Portland, Oregon on 50,000-watt KEX.
Oh, how's it going, Hound Dog?
Oh, pretty good. I just wanted to let you know I had a weird experience about 2 weeks ago. I talked to an alien space being.
Holy smokes.
And he told me that they're going to come to the planet. They mean us no harm, but we must all die because they must sterilize the planet. They're going to heat the surface of Earth to 2,000 degrees for 100 of our solar years. I don't know. I was curious if you had heard anything about that.
Well, that will bake us well, won't it?
No, I haven't heard anything about that. I haven't heard anything about anybody coming to make baked potatoes out of us, no.
All right. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi. Hello there, toll-free line. Are you there? No, I guess they gave up early. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Carson, California, Art.
Yes.
Get the radio turned off here. I was curious, Shawn, since you're in the L.A. area, have you been a devoted listener of Gene Scott?
I've seen him on the TV a couple of times, but I haven't listened to him. His TV show went off the air a couple of years ago. I've heard him, and I used to listen to him a while back, and then he just got kind of boring. So he just sat there and smoked a cigar for hours on the TV. So.
Yeah, I know, but I used to listen to him in the early '80s myself, and he did a lot of interesting studies about the Great Pyramid and about the pyramid inch and the spiritual significance of that.
Yes.
Anyway, I was curious with this thing about the church and everything. What if there's no millennium, as spoken of in the Bible, according to what Christian teaching says? What will be the first 500 years? Will the lion truly lay down with the lamb? And
no, I didn't say that. I said that the true millennium is not going to begin for another 1,000 years. That we're in a pre-millennial period right now, and that the true millennium, where the four-squared city of Jerusalem actually physically lands, happens. I mean, and if you look at the spacing in the Bible, it doesn't happen for almost another 1,000 years. So there will be a millennial period. It just doesn't. It's just not going to happen right away.
All right.
The Great Pyramid talks about. I mean, if you want specifically what the Great Pyramid states. The Great Pyramid states that we're already in the age of the resurrection of the quick and the dead, so to speak, that the dead in Christ or the God-knowing ones will rise first, and that this began with an age of universal reincarnation beginning in 1914, so that everybody who has ever lived will actually be on the planet when all of these natural catastrophes and all these great judgments come. We'll have a population of about between 6 and 8 billion or so. That as we enter this phase, that the next messianic figure, and I'll give you the specific date that the pyramid gives, there is another messianic figure, and the Great Pyramid predicted the place that Christ would be born the first time, predicted the approximate date, which was September 27th of 2 BC. It states that the next messianic figure will be physically born, again, as a physical person in near Stonehenge, England, that this individual will rule as a king or a king or a queen, for a 120-year period, and that there would be 4 more of these messianic figures, and it might be the same one that then leaves and comes back, for a 500-year period, and then around 2449 is when the last of these great spiritual leaders incarnates, and then we have 500 years where we don't use the teachers at all. We get it right. We understand that the true essence of the creation is within ourselves. We all become messianic figures, and or literally we all become God-knowing, so to speak. We live like that for 500 years or so. There's a sliding back to the old ways for a brief period of time, which causes war and what have you around the year 2900. And then finally the capstone returns to the pyramid, and then you have the beginning of the true millennium. That's according to the Great Pyramid dating.
So then finally we get it.
Finally we get it, yes, finally.
All right, on the toll-free line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Hi, is this me?
It is you.
Meta Dittos. This is Brian in Seattle.
Hi, Brian.
From KVI. I was wondering if you or Shawn has ever read the book called The Raw Material.
I've not.
I've skimmed through it. I'm familiar with it.
Oh yeah, you're familiar with it. It's not really a skimming book, but it contains information from a supposedly basically a distilled sixth density kind of a how shall I say, union.
Yeah, from supposedly Ra, who is a spirit who came to this lady under certain types of trance and what have you.
Well, okay. But the point I'm trying to get at is, or actually the question I had for you is, it sparked me when I was hearing you talk about the Galactic Federation. Do you believe in total duality separation of mankind into 2 different distinct directions?
All right, it'll have to be a quick answer, Shawn.
No. Everybody has their own personal path. I think mankind will begin to polarize, where we have groups of people who begin to become enlightened very rapidly. We'll have groups of people who will just go straight down into the pit, so to speak. We'll have groups of people who will have to continue to come back over and over again because they don't get it. So it polarizes into a number of different paths.
If there is reincarnation, Shawn, how does reincarnation, or the theory of it, account for the fact that we are increasing in our numbers?
Well,
I've always wondered about that.
That's what I was talking about. Is it supposedly everyone who has ever lived will be here now for this particular phase? And as far as increasing in our numbers goes, I mean, you have to understand that we have had a super technology civilization on this planet for I think at least the better part of 40,000 years, and possibly as far back as 90 to about 100,000 years or so.
So toward the end, or the change, the gang's all here.
Everybody shows up for the graduation, yes.
Shawn, hold on. We've gone this far. Might as well do the whole ball of wax. We'll see you after the news. You're listening to the CBC Radio Network. I'm Art Bell.
Continue with your calls to the Kingdom of Nine and Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Now here again is Art.
Here again is Art. Hi, everybody. This has been quite a show, hasn't it? Shawn Morton continues to be my guest into Hour 5. Prediction, prophecy, reality, fantasy, I don't know. You decide for yourself. But he sure is a bright guy, isn't he? Once again, Shawn Morton. Shawn, are you there?
I am.
All right, here's a fact, Shawn. Do you think that the interest in the Course of Miracles will help bring back our society to the state of spirituality needed to save our planet? If not, what do we need to do?
I'm not really familiar with the Course in Miracles. What do we need to do? I've been talking about it for most of the evening, and you talk about it on your show all the time. It has it has a lot to do with self-reliance, respect for others, and basically just getting back to a simple path of love and respect for ourselves, for our friends and family, and ultimately for the earth.
But right now, if you had to depend on the current course, your advice, no doubt, would be head for the caves.
Well, my advice would be, that as I said, you should go where the freedom is. You should go where I believe that the American Indians, those of them who have lived in harmony with the land, and
would you advise people get out of the cities?
It would. I don't think they have to do it right away. I mean, I'm trying to. I'm trying to point out that there are going to be a number of events that will occur as triggers. Of course, my ultimately suggestion would be is to get to a place where you have access to water, access to land, and a place to grow food, and eventually, one way or the other, people are going to start coming out of the cities as they are now, and begin to grow food and begin to form primarily physical, social, and spiritual communities. And those who get out of the cities first and begin to form those communities first, they will notice that many, many other people will also begin to come out of the cities and follow their example.
All right. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Hi, this is Mark in Berkeley, listening to KSRO out of Santa Rosa.
Yes.
Just got to ask him, how are the Illuminati mixed up in all of this? Has he got any indication about them, or if that's just a story that people have told over the years?
All right. Conspiratorial lore, Shawn, or the real thing? Shawn? Where'd you go, Shawn? Uh-oh. I think we lost Shawn. So what I'm going to do is to reestablish contact with Shawn. And let me see exactly how can I do that. Well, I'll tell you what. This is live radio, folks, so let's just try and do it right here. It says here in fine print. The trouble is, every single line here is locked up. Here we go. Let me try this. Let's see. This happens every now and then. It is the nature of radio that, or I guess of the telephone system, that every now and then you frankly lose it. It happens. Shawn, are you there? No, now his line is busy. Shawn, if you're out there, please hang up your telephone. Repeat, hang up your telephone, and we'll try and get you back. We didn't do that. The telephone company did it, I'm sorry to say. And so we're going to continue to try to reconnect with Shawn. And I think that he's trying to reach me on another line. So, once again, we're going to try and reestablish communications, and we'll be right. The telephone system dumped us. It does that every now and then, particularly in the middle of the morning, and every line was so locked that I couldn't get an outgoing line. But I've done it. And once again, here is Shawn Morton. Shawn?
We're back. They can't get rid of us that easy.
That's right. Lots of adversity, but we've got them covered. All right. Back to the telephones. A lot of people want to talk to you. Every line, I think we're jamming up the entire exchange here.
Oh, my goodness.
On the toll-free line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Hello, Art.
Hello.
My name's Bill, and I'm from Grants Pass, Oregon.
Oh, yes. A very hot area.
Well, quite frankly, to tell you the truth, I just think that your guest has been severely misled in life.
No doubt being led down the path by the devil?
Yes.
I guessed that. And we addressed that. All right, Shawn, there you've got it. There is one. They think that you're being influenced by dark forces. And I would ask you again, how can you be sure you're not?
I have no answer for that other than the fact that I follow spirit every day. I pray. I meditate every day. I've always asked the creation for wisdom every single day, and I certainly hope that the things that I'm saying are more of a warning than anything else. I suppose if I knew these things and simply didn't talk about them and didn't warn people of them and didn't tell them of things going on and didn't warn them that they have to change their life and get back to a simpler path and go back to the true laws of creation and start studying the first 5 books of the Old Testament and understanding that they were set up to successfully set up a society and love one another. I don't know. It's not my job to change anybody's vision, Art. It's not my job to change anybody's religion or anybody's vision. I think that
I understand.
All religions and philosophies are equally good if they are practiced properly for the betterment of themselves and others.
All right, Shawn. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Good morning.
Yes, Art. This is Dan from the University District in Seattle, KVI.
Yes, Dan.
I just sent a fax to you for Shawn.
Yes, I got it, but sir, I'm on the air, and I just there's not an opportunity to pass along that info right now.
Okay, if you could relay that to him sometime tonight, that would be
well.
greatly.
I guess, Shawn, we can just tell you right now, this man wants to get hold of you.
Okay.
And I guess you've got a number where he can do that, right?
Yeah. Here's a number for people to call for information or leave a message. It's once again area code 310-217. 7579. That's 310-217-7579. You can call that for information about ordering my newsletter, the Delphi Associates.
And he can also get hold of you at that number, right?
Yes, I'm just hoping that I'll just keep trying because it's a voicemail, and of course the mailbox gets jammed, and I've got to clear it every day, and so there'll be a space available as soon as I clear the box, and I'm sure it's already full now.
All right, caller.
Okay, will you be checking that line tonight?
I will first thing in the morning. And if you have any information about what's going on in Seattle and what's happening up there as far as Mount Rainier or any quakes or anything that's happening up there, I'd very much like to know it.
All right, very good. Well, I would like to talk to you as soon as possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
okay,
thank you, and have a good morning, caller. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Yeah, hi, Art.
Yes, speak up good and loud, ma'am. You're hard to hear.
Yeah, hi, good morning. This is Debbie from Mesa, Arizona.
Yes, Debbie.
KFYI. Hi, Shawn. A couple of questions. First one is Clinton intentionally trying to head this country towards a totalitarian government?
I think, he's certainly heading that way. I think that there are certain forces. Him being a Democratic president, and I mean that in the loosest political term, you're seeing the same pattern going with, I think, Clinton that happened with Jimmy Carter. When Jimmy Carter was elected, it was my belief that Jimmy Carter was primarily only put into office just to do one thing, and that was to pass the Panama Canal treaties, make sure we gave away the Panama Canal, gave the Panamanians $2 billion to take it off our hands, and provide a totally free country so that the very big moneyed interest in this country could actually move drugs through the Panama Canal very easily. I think Clinton was primarily put in specifically to get NAFTA and GATT passed. They have a lot of wars planned. I think the one problem that they may have with Clinton is the fact that you might want to say a lot of bad things about him. However, he does seem to be a pacifist. He is not primarily pro-military and never has been. And there's a question of whether or not the military would actually follow him if he got us into a number of campaigns.
Unfortunately, a lot of so-called pacifists get us into wars. Anything else, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Was Vince Foster, was that a suicide or a murder?
All right, thank you. Vince Foster.
I think the evidence points to it very, very clearly that if it was a suicide, it was the most ridiculous suicide ever. And I do believe that there was some skullduggery involved. The entire Clinton administration sort of reminds me of The Godfather meets the Beverly Hillbillies. It's
That's the funniest thing you've said all night. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Well, you've done it again. You got a brilliant guest.
Thank you.
Shucks, thank you.
This is Bob from Sacramento.
Yes, Bob.
KST.
Yes.
I respect this guy tremendously, but, you know, I have to say that, you know, I study the pyramids, and you can read anything in that thing you want to. The definitive work on the pyramid was done by Adam Rutherford out of England, and it was a 4-volume work, and it was based on it's based on Jesus. It's the Bible cut in stone, and now the United States our country is being invaded by Eastern religions, and I'm afraid your friend there is influenced by Eastern religions because the Christian Bible doesn't talk about
Well, I think there is
reincarnation.
absolutely no question about the fact that there is that influence. We've been listening to it all night.
Well, you know, when you play with the Ouija board, you're not going to get the.
Sir, I don't play with a Ouija board. That's not me.
Well, this other fellow did.
Well,
the soldiers, and I don't think Jesus deals through the Ouija board.
All right. Well, again, sir, Shawn.
That's not me.
That's right.
That's Vance Davis.
Yeah, I think
I
he's
simply
got
wrote a
you
book about his
confused.
adventures and published his prophecies.
All right. That's a good answer. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Hi, I missed a lot of the show tonight. It's a great show. This is Brian from Albuquerque, and I was wondering about those 7 cities where he said they were going to have martial law declared and gun sweeps and all.
Yes.
Los Angeles, Miami, Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C.
And what about the rest of the country? What's going to be going on with the rest of us?
Well, I believe, as I said, I think that many of the rural areas are going to be left alone. It would be virtually impossible to invade and occupy all the United States, especially with as well armed as we are. You're going to see in the United States virtually the same thing politically, socially, and economically that happened to Russia, that we're basically just going to collapse, that it's going to go back to a large number of city-states, or should I say independent republics run by city-states. And you have to remember, too, that the one thing that makes the United States a superpower is the fact that we have the ability to grow food, and we have the ability to get it places. We have roads. The Russians grow as much food as we do, but they don't have roads to get it anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be as bad. Many people will be moving out of the cities into the rural areas simply because that's where the food and the water is, and because there are going to be so many natural catastrophes, specifically along the coasts. California, Florida, New York City will be pretty much evacuated by 1999. There will be an attack on New York City by this Antichrist individual by July of 1999. It's one of the only prophecies that Nostradamus gives us. He doesn't play around. He gives us an exact date. Talks about July 7th of 1999. The new city is destroyed by some sort of atomic attack. And I believe that that's the beginning of a great 27-year war, which will, for a period of time, pit the United States against the Islamic republics, which will team up with China. And
that sounds great, I guess.
I'm sorry?
Sounds great.
Well, but I don't think the United States is going to be involved in it. I think that because of the natural catastrophes and the breakup of the United States,
well, I don't know. If they nuke New York City, I think we're probably going to be involved.
Well, we'll be involved to an extent of where by that time it'll be a question of whether or not the entire United States actually wants to get involved in the affair, because it is my belief that the United States will not be the United States anymore. They will not be able, if anything, the rest of the country will be warring with the economic interest in New York and the political interest in Washington. It'll be very much a civil war situation.
Boy, it's all coming very quickly, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
All right, on the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton, about 2 minutes. Hello.
Okay, hi, I'm Stan in San Diego, getting ready for Dreamland on June 19th.
Yes, Stan.
Quickly, I have a daughter of a friend of mine who spent 2 years in Tibet dodging Chinese officials, taking pictures, doing work, and so forth. What do you see as the outcome or the fate of the Dalai Lama and the Tibetans? And another thing, if North Korea does send this missile over, the Mrs. Tokyo, you said, will Tokyo strike back? I have a feeling that they have their own nukes already, and if they don't, they can probably do it over their lunch hour or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right.
Well, according to the Nostradamus prophecy that we are currently studying right now, there seems to be an attack which misses Tokyo, which destroys a structure that Nostradamus calls the Parthenon, and there is a Parthenon structure at the foot of Mount Fujiyama. I think that if that occurs, I do think the United States will go in lock, stock, and barrel and virtually level North Korea. I think we got the guns over there to do it. We got the planes to do it. I think it obviously would be a big mistake on their part.
You think it would be a conventional leveling?
I think we might just fight fire with fire. I think it will be a conventional leveling, just to say, we've got enough conventional weapons now to basically just blow them back into the Stone Age. It'd be a big mistake. Even Clinton has said if you fire a weapon like this, that North Korea will cease to exist. As far as Tibet goes, it is my belief that Tibet is what we call the root chakra of the planet.
Very quickly.
And I certainly see a return of the spiritual leaders in Tibet after many of the great wars 20 years from now.
That's got to do it. Half-hour mark. Right back.
From the Kingdom of Nye, you're hearing Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the CBC Radio Network.
Good morning. Shawn Morton is my guest, and we'll get back to him in just a moment. Now, this program has been so packed full of incredible information that I can imagine you might want a copy of it. So I've got a lot of faxes asking, here's how to get it. 24 hours a day, including right now. Call area code 503-664-7966. And by the way, that applies also to the Richard Hoagland Show, any other special program we've done. The Dreamland series is available. It's area code 503-664-7966. Now, back to Shawn Morton. And, Shawn, why don't you give out your telephone number and address as well?
Okay. Once again, for anybody that is interested in ordering the book, The Millennium Factor, I don't know if I should give out prices or not, but, The Millennium Factor is $20. The Gulf Breeze Prophecies is $25. If you want to order both books, they're $40, and I'll throw in the postage and handling. If you want to order the Delphi Associates newsletter, which is the predictive newsletter that I write every month, that's $45 for a 12-issue subscription, and you can make all checks payable to PRI. That's the Prophecy Research Institute, PRI, and it's located at 2207 Hermosa Avenue, Hermosa, Hermosa Beach, California, 90254. And if you didn't get all that, I'll give you the phone number, and you can call the voicemail, which is 310-217-7579.
No connection, Shawn, to the PRI in Mexico, right?
No.
All right.
This is the end of side 1. Please leave the cassette exactly where it is, flip it over, and begin again.
Wildcard line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Hi, Art. This is Andy in Santa Barbara.
Hello, Andy.
I'd just like to say to start out with Shawn, you sound great. I've heard a lot of so-called predictioners out there, and they usually stumble through some of the kind of questions you've gotten tonight, and you haven't batted an eye at them.
Well, thanks, Andy. I walk my talk.
It sure seems like it.
Thanks.
Couple of comments that are along the lines. Here, I live in Santa Barbara, but I listen to a lot of L.A. stations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've caught last night, Channel 5, 10 o'clock news. They had a story about March and Norton Air Force Base.
Right.
They called in the Red Cross to set up repatriation centers for South Korean refugees, which might be interesting. And also, they had a story on hard copy a couple of days ago about a widow of a Dallas police officer who told her that he's the assassin of JFK. And he actually had pictures of Lee Harvey Oswald, the famous picture rifle with the picture with him with the rifle.
Right.
He had copies of that, different poses that they'd never seen before. And they don't know how he got them. He claimed to his wife that he was the actual gunman on the grassy knoll.
Interesting.
And she had a deathbed confession of it. She was dying of emphysema.
Certainly possible.
Yeah. So my question to you is that somebody's mentioned the Illuminati.
Yes.
And my mother's real big on the Illuminati, and she's got a lot of claims about the Masons and their connection to the Tower of Babel and back hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right.
What do you know about them? Are they involved, or it's all...
Well, let me give it to you just in brief and how I believe the Masons got involved. The Illuminati was an organization that was started by Adam Weishaupt in 1776. Weishaupt basically went to a number of 33rd degree Masons all across Europe, and Weishaupt basically just invented a 34th, 5th, and 6th level of Masonry, went to all these men that were 32nd, 33rd degree Masons and said, I represent the true white brotherhood. You've been such a good Mason that we're going to initiate you into the real secret teachings. And basically played to their egos. And he was successful beyond his wildest dreams. And his dream was eventual world conquest, and specifically through economic conquest. And the way to do this had to be to get rid of most of the monarchies in Europe and begin to create democracies where the people who would lead the people were always picked and chosen by the people with the most money. And Weishaupt was fabulously successful. And I think that's what the connection with the Masons was, is that these very successful Masons became what you would call 34th, 5th, and 6th level Illuminati. But remember how evil the organization was, because international communism was a branch of the Illuminati originally. That's why both China and Russia used to celebrate May 1st as May Day, because that was the formation of the original Bavarian Illuminati. And of course, communism succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. The Illuminati was specifically based on a worship of Lucifer, the angel of light, or the angel of illumination. The Alice Bailey teachings, I think, were very interesting, because Alice Bailey used to publish under the name Lucifer Press, directly as part of the Illuminati, and then she changed it to Lucius, because I guess so many people are getting upset by that. I think the majority of Masons, and I think the Masons that started this country are very good, decent people.
Yes, they are. The Masons actually do a lot of good, Shawn.
And they've done a lot of good, and our forefathers were all Masons, and I think that the Masons got involved. The very top level of Masonry got involved because they were basically initially fooled by Weishaupt, and then got addicted to to the evil of it, and to the economic and social power that they wielded by saying, well, I'll give you a job if you join my group, and you'll help me, and I'll help your kids, and in the long run, we'll eventually conquer the world. And I think they're in the process of doing so through international finance, which is, that's not a big leap of faith to take to make that statement.
All right. On the toll-free line, with time evaporating, Shawn, Morton is all yours. Hello, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning. Shawn, I would like to know if you know the Richter number of the Colombian earthquake.
The Richter scale number was 8.1.
Okay.
The surface wave sensor, the SWS, was 7.4, and it was 400 miles beneath the Earth's crust in Bolivia.
Yes.
And it shook the Midwest. Well, it was felt as far north as Canada.
I'm curious, Shawn, how many earthquakes are that deep? How rare was that?
They're very rare. I mean, they're very rare. That's a long way down under the mantle. And when you have earthquakes, as I said, 400 miles or so down, it means that a fundamental change is coming in the actual mantle of the Earth. They're not. I mean, to give you an example, most of the California faultines and fault lines probably only go down maybe 6 miles to 10 miles tops. I mean, that's a deep quake. That's a fundamental shifting in the platelets of the Earth.
So something 400 miles deep is truly fundamental.
Yeah, and that means something's happening, and because that edge is beginning to go, it's basically probably going to work its way up once again into the Midwest, because that fault line is directly connected to the New Madrid Fault.
All right, on the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hello.
Hi, Art.
Hello.
Ed from Albuquerque.
Hello, Ed.
Yes. Shawn, I'm stealing a little of Art's thunder on increasing numbers, on reincarnation.
On what? I'm sorry?
On reincarnation.
Yes, sir.
I just distill it to maybe an inherited collective consciousness. But how I see it, you sort of lose the connection with the past. I mean, you know, where you can't bring what was there, isn't brought forward. Well, if that isn't clear, let me go on to another question on comparative religion.
Please, it's late.
Okay, great.
I've been up a long time.
All right. If all religions, I mean, give an explanation for a beginning, I guess just to follow a spiritual guidance, then wouldn't you say that if you compare one with the other, that one would have to be a story, and the other would be a story or a myth, and the other would be a line of history or a fact?
I don't know if it's just late, but I'm not exactly sure I understand.
I'm not sure I do either. Try again, caller.
Well, religion to me, you know, I can go to a book, and it's been handed down for generations and generations.
Right.
And you said that the Catholic Church, yes, has had some, you know, has not handed down. There's been some changes in it.
Correct.
Okay, well that's the New Testament. Well, how about the Old Testament? Where how do we know what we can decipher between what's story, myth, or what's a line of history and fact?
Well, primarily, let me put it to you this way: the very word religion means to regulate belief. It means to regulate a belief system, and it's much different from what you would call a personal path of spirituality. The books of the Old Testament, I mean, whether you want to believe them or you don't want to believe them, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, otherwise known as the Mosaic Code, were responsible for setting up probably some of the most powerful and most long-lived and long-lasting civilizations on Earth. And the entire story of the Old Testament is basically Yahweh or Jehovah plants a race of people on this planet, Adam and Eve. They were not created in the first 7 days. They were created well after the first part of the creation. They were a specific race of people. Yahweh comes down and basically says, look, here's the operating manual for planet Earth. If you obey these laws and these codes and these dictums, you will prosper, possess the gates of your enemies, and be healthy and live a long time. You disobey them, and the earth itself will strike back at you. You will have fires, floods, famines, wars, all the things that are happening to the United States right now. They went in 7-year and 7-day cycles. You obeyed the Sabbath by resting every 7th day. Every 7th year, you repudiated all debts, freed all petty criminals, and basically gave everybody a chance to totally start over. And then every 49th and 50th year, you not only tilled all the crops under so that the crops, well, I'm sorry, every 7th year you let the land lie fallow, which means you didn't grow crops on the land, you let it rest, which broke the pest cycle and restored the topsoil. And then the most important thing was every 49th and 50th year, you gave all the land back to the people that originally owned it. Why did you do this? Because it kept all the land and all the money and all the power from accumulating in the hands of 1% of the people.
Right.
If you want to know what's going on in the world today, 1% of the people are owning and controlling everything, and once that happens, the revolution that occurs from everybody that doesn't have anything will be massive, and it will be bloody, and this country is basically at the end of its political cycle because we have not obeyed those laws. Is that clear?
I think it is, yes. Shawn, I want to tell everybody that they will hear you again here. We have scheduled you for Dreamland. I believe the date might be August 8th. Is that correct?
Actually, I think it was the 7th. Your
7th.
lovely wife told me it was August 7th.
August 7th.
Yes.
All right, very good. Just wanted to get that promo in. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Yeah, this is Doc Democrat.
Hello.
Now, Shawn, you said that President Clinton is sending B-52 bombers and stealth fighters over to North Korea.
Well, 72 hours ago, I got word that there were that the green light was go and that some sort of attack was imminent.
Now, is the United States going to win this war?
Yeah.
Is President Clinton going to get credit for it then?
I believe so, yes.
Well, how can that be? You said he's going to be assassinated by July.
Well, the war will probably occur between now and then.
Oh, so in other words, he'll get credit for the victory, and then they'll kill him.
Well, we're getting ready to go. Well, remember, what I was saying was that my vision of this had something to do with Bosnia and Serbia, not Korea. It had something to do with Bosnia and Serbia and had something to do with foreign affairs. So my initial prediction, and this was months ago, actually years ago, was that his demise would come from something that had to do with Bosnia and Serbia, have to do with an assassination attempt that came from that area.
An attempt, but they won't be successful.
I believe they will be.
But in other words, the main thing here is that Bill Clinton's going to have a major foreign policy victory in North Korea first.
Well, let's certainly hope so. But then again, I want to remind you that Korea is not Iraq. It's not going to be easy. We can't just go. We're not even sure where the bombs are.
You know something? Listening to him, I think he was actually more concerned with Bill Clinton getting credit for winning a war in Korea than he was with what might happen to Bill Clinton.
Right.
Oh, geez.
Well, sir, I want to reiterate again for the record, I don't want anything to happen to the guy. I wish harm to no one. This was simply a warning. That was why we had the guts to actually send the letters, go to the Secret Service, and state to the Secret Service, look, this is what we think is happening. You guys need to protect him. We feel that his life is in danger.
All right.
And that was what we did as citizens and basically people who were concerned about it.
All right. Toll-free line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton.
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. Your opinion of the 96 elections, and what's your opinion of Al Bielek's story?
All right.
I've known Al Bielek for a long time. It's very interesting. My partner, Peter Alexander, went with Al and did the video Montauk Revisited back there. I think it's got a lot of validity to it. I haven't been able to disprove any part of it.
96 elections?
About the 96 elections, I think they're very strange. There's not only a lot of confusion around the 96 elections, it looks almost as though that whoever is president by 1996 is appointed. I also have something, to answer that other question, too, about Clinton, I've got sort of a weird scenario here I'd like to lay on you.
All right, go ahead.
If Gore becomes president of the United States, it is my belief that Jay Rockefeller will become vice president of the United States. And that if, in fact, something happens to Gore, wouldn't it be interesting that we would have Jay Rockefeller as president of the United States and also executor of the bankruptcy?
Yeah, the timing would be about right.
It would be just about right. And Lawrence Rockefeller is very, very interested. That's Jay's dad. Lawrence Rockefeller is very interested in taking the federal government bankrupt and reestablishing Rockefeller control over the United States and basically destroying the European banking cartels once and for all, because the whole ship of state has been cast adrift ever since the death of Baron von Rothschild about 4 years ago.
All right. We don't have a lot of time. Trying to get everybody in. On the toll-free line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hello.
Yes, this is Al and Eugene.
Hi, Al.
Hi, I'd like to hear what you have to say about Mexico, and then maybe a little bit on anything you know about the Greys and the reptilians.
Okay, Mexico City, in my predictions, will be the country that will be the most damaged and the most destroyed by the coming quakes.
Oh, really?
After the major quakes in California, what will happen is that if the Juan de Fuco plate ruptures, you will have what is called Coco's plate begin to fracture and actually begin to twist. Mexico City and Guadalajara sit not only on a swamp, but right on a fractured platelet. It's a large triangular platelet that runs right between Guadalajara and Mexico City. Mexico City's got 27 million people. Guadalajara's got almost 20. And they're getting ready for Mount Popocatépetl to explode. That's also the next major volcano that's going to go off. I believe that Mexico will be flooded on both coasts, and that most of what will be left of Mexico by the year 2000 to 2001 will be one large chunk of islands in the center, mostly the mountains. But Mexico is the place that is the most damaged by a majority of the quakes. As far as the Greys and the reptilians, I actually don't think we have time to get into that. That's a whole other subject.
It certainly is. Wild card line, you're on the air with Shawn Morton. Hi.
Hi, Shawn, KOH up here in Reno. I believe on the southern border of North Korea, they had built a huge dam.
Yes.
That if that dam ever blew, it would wipe out hundreds of square miles, maybe piece 10 by 50.
Yes.
Down in, including the city of Seoul, with a standing body of water about 6 to 12 feet, which would virtually wipe out every aircraft and every piece of equipment on the ground.
I'm not familiar with the dam, so
okay.
I don't know.
Could be wrong. And then in your psyche, do you see what the heck is going to happen to our Congress and all of those that bankrupted us? And one other point, any thoughts on Waco?
All right, thank you. Good question. Congress.
Much of the federal jurisdictions will be disbanded. We'll fight a war against them for a period of time during the Civil War period. But remember that the states themselves become independent republics once again, and one by one they begin to break away from the federal union, primarily due to the idiocy of the federal government.
All right, John, he wanted to comment on Waco.
Comment on Waco. I think it was a tragedy. I think Janet Reno should have been prosecuted. I think the people that went in there were just flat-out murderers. My initial image of Waco psychically was that it was my belief that I think the day before that there was a Spetsnaz-style Delta Force team that went into Waco, that shot Koresh and and many of his followers, that then rounded up the women and children in the 2 underground bunkers, and I think threw firebombs down to basically murder them and cover up the evidence of what was going on. And then that's why they sent in the tanks with the flamethrowers on them to basically cover up all the evidence. And
sure
that's exactly what the coroners found was Koresh and his main band were all shot in the head execution style, and then all the children were rounded up with the women and whoever was left.
All right, Sean, we're out of time.
Okay.
One more time, give them your phone number.
Okay, just to wrap up, my telephone number is 310-217-7579. It's PRI, the Prophecy Research Institute, for the Delphi Associates newsletter, the Millennium Factor, or the Gulf Breeze Prophecies. You can write to PRI at 2207 Hermosa Avenue, Hermosa, Hermosa Beach, California, 90254. Art, your Prince, thank you so much for having me. I know I was only supposed to be on for like 20 minutes, and I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Thanks, Sean. Take care.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Well, sorry, everybody. The clock is the clock. I will be back with Dreamland Sunday evening at 7 o'clock Pacific Time, or whenever it is you normally hear it. I want to thank you all for copies of this tape, of this show. You can call area code 503-664-7966. Please take the number down. It's going to save me having to repeat it a million times. Area code 503-664-7966. I want to say thank you. It has been another wonderful week of talk radio. Kind of a prophecies and predictions week. With some of the moon thrown in. It's really been quite something. It's been quite a week, and we'll try and do it again next week. So for everybody at the network, on behalf of everybody at the network, thank you, and good night.
To order a copy of this program, call area code 503-664-7966.